Elevated conversations, The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man.
Hello, how are you doing? Welcome to Friday, the 23rd of April 2021. Hoping that you had a lovely night or lovely day, depending on where you are right now. Nduoko,
Yes.
how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Now is you have arrived now Friday. Welcome.
Oh, you were here a while ago, clearly.
We've been here.
Okay, we being you and the people in your kingdom.
Yes.
Okay.
The rest of us. You're the only one who's arriving here today.
I have arrived.
Welcome. City, good morning.
Morning, Eric.
You well?
Yes, I am. Thank you for asking. I am very well.
Hata mimi niko salama kabisa.
Uko maridadi.
Nashukuru Mungu.
Maridadi.
Maulana Jalali.
Maulana.
Good.
What's Maulana?
Godi.
Huh?
Godi.
Okay,
Papa
in
Godo.
English? Huh?
God.
Godi.
It's God.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Oh, you think Godi.
Yes, that's Kiswahili for God.
Now you're lying. City.
Okay. What is Nigerian for God?
There's no language like Nigerian.
I've told you on many occasions there is a language like
There's
that.
no language like Nigerian. It's like you can't say you speak Kenyan.
Yes, you do. You
Why
can.
not?
Oh, yes, you can.
No, you don't speak Kenyan.
Oh, yes,
Yes, you do.
Go, Joe. Don't speak Kenyan.
See, that's Nigeria.
So you're saying, Bas, you're saying the English don't speak English?
That's not the same thing.
Or the Englanders don't speak English?
It's not the same thing, and you know it. And I know what
Or
you're
the
trying
French
to
don't
do.
speak
I've
French.
seen you from very far, both of you. So leave me alone.
Eric, you get the impression that we're being told that eyesight has improved. Eh? Okay.
Israelis speak Israel.
Oh God. Yeah, they speak Israel.
So then,
Get away, Joe.
Germans, they speak.
They speak German. Indians speak Indian.
Don't they? And then they give the Indian names like Gujarati. So, as we're speaking Kenyan now, and you, when you Omo Daddy, you're speaking Nigerian.
When I do it,
You Omo Daddy. That's a Nigerian exclamation, which is the equivalent of Kenya. Oh yeah,
Akiwoye.
walla or walla la la la. Those expressions.
Wololo.
Yes, bas, ndio hiyo. Or if you were to get vernacular, guy mwadhani. That one also, same thing.
Omo Daddy.
See,
See now, Omo Daddy, I'm hailing you.
Yes, we're also hailing you.
Buddha.
Yeah, like that.
Bazu.
Banange. Okay, no, that's something else.
That doesn't sound Nigerian.
That is
It's not.
Ugandan.
It's Ugandan. I know.
See, and then you say they don't speak. What do they speak?
Ugandan.
They speak Buganda.
Okay, let's not split hairs over
Ugandans.
this matter.
Welcome to the show, everybody. So today we're going to have a couple of conversations. We are getting into the weekend. It's starting to rain. So first, the weather. Tanzania.
Yeah. Tanzania, we have to watch this one. So, look, there's a cyclone that's heading it's within the Indian Ocean, of course, and it's heading towards the coast of Tanzania. The hope, generally, so they've not seen something like this in the last 69 years. The hope is that the land will take on the major shock of the cyclone. The reality that is presenting itself is that that may not happen, and they will get a month's worth of rain in the next 2 days. And they're looking at about 250 plus millimeters of rain over the next 48 hours, and strong, strong winds of tens of kilometers per hour.
Not hurricane.
No, cyclone.
Not typhoon.
Cyclone.
Cyclone, the difference is?
How do we say? A cyclone is a storm in the water.
It's cyclones.
It's a storm. So hurricane is like a storm on land. A cyclone is more or less the same thing in the water.
And the typhoon.
Okay.
It's a hurricane in East Asia.
Okay. Yeah, you don't see typhoons on this side of the world.
And you don't see hurricanes
On this
in
side
Asia.
of the world either.
And what do you call those things?
You
that
see
are,
hurricanes in the Western Hemisphere. You see typhoons in the
So
East.
there are certain oceans that are more prone to these things than other oceans.
Yes.
So Indian Ocean
The
doesn't
Indian
quite have
Ocean, no. But so now you have the Pacific, which is more prone to things like typhoons.
it.
Right?
Why? Is it associated with earthquakes and things like that?
Well, earthquakes. So the more severe earthquakes that you see are on the other side, Eastern Hemisphere and Western Hemisphere. In the middle here, you will see some earthquakes, but we don't see the severity that you do in the places in the likes of Japan and on the other side, Hawaii.
See, why I ask
the
is
US.
because you find places like New Orleans, they seem to be constantly targeted by this animal.
The hurricanes.
Hurricanes.
Yes, there's always, and they are feminine names. Katrina, and also, So,
Yeah.
so
What's happening
Tanzania
really,
is,
the earth is shifting, eh?
yes.
The earth continues to shift, and as it does, it shifts and settles, it shifts and settles. And so in some parts where it's shifting and settling, you get earthquakes. Other places, you will get... So now it shifts and then it fills with water. You will get a hurricane.
Yeah,
Excuse
so
me.
it shifts in the sea, it means the water also moves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you have wind, it gives it
Which is
propulsion.
what is moving the water,
Yes.
essentially. And then you get a hurricane.
So I've asked Google, what's the difference between cyclone and hurricane? Well, Google says they are basically the same
same thing.
thing, but are given different names depending on where they appear. Hurricanes are tropical storms that form over the North Atlantic Ocean and Northeast Pacific, while cyclones are formed over the South Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Typhoons are formed over the Northwest Pacific Ocean. So Pacific Mandela, typhoon. Upper Indian Ocean is cyclone. Huko,
Hurricane.
hurricane. Bas.
So
So,
essentially
it's
what we're
Tanzania
looking
then,
at- Tanzania. So essentially what we're
weekend.
looking at this weekend is that heavy, heavy rain, strong, strong winds, something that has not happened in 70 years. And again, the hope is that the land will be able to take on the major part of the force, but it's likely that they will experience severe, severe flooding over the next 48 to 72 hours. And yeah, a month's worth of rain in 3 days is what's probably going to happen. And they're looking at it has. If you look at the weather patterns in the last 1 week over Dar es Salaam, so they're looking at Dar es Salaam and Zanzibar specifically. It has been raining quite some, and from all reports, it's going to get heavier. So it's our hope that it is not as bad as it's been predicted to be. That
If
it
you think
will not
about
be
the
as
other,
bad.
the other heavy rainfall that battered Dar es Salaam a couple of years ago, it was bad. There was serious flooding, and there was serious displacement of people. Now, can you imagine this particular weekend, how it's going to look like? It's going to be crazy. It's really going to look so bad. And you don't expect that it's only going to be concentrated around, Zanzibar and the east coast of Tanzania. It may spill over into some areas of the east coast of Kenya.
Oh, for
Definitely, Kenya's coast is also going to experience some wind and rain.
Definitely, we're looking at Mombasa, and yeah, we'll experience some of this.
Yeah. So anyway, quickly then we'll look at everything else during the newspaper headlines. Let's talk about COVID.
Okay, so let's look at 145,332,794 cases that we're looking at now in the world. It continues to rise, and definitely in the US, 32 million, half of that in the Indian continent. We saw some horrific pictures of cremation sites in India yesterday. Looking at the state of Pradesh, and things are really, really bad. People are being... So obviously, the majority of people who die in this area are cremated. And so looking at that aerial view of some of those pictures was actually quite gut-wrenching to see that more and more people are dying at a rate that they did not think would happen. So they are in their second wave of COVID-19. right now. And look, last week on a day like this, what were we looking at? We were looking at 13 million cases of COVID in India. Today, we're looking at 16,257,309 cases. We look at an increase of about 3 million COVID cases in 8 days on the subcontinent. Not good.
Those are it's a very high number.
Yes.
186,928 deaths so far.
Yeah. And if we're looking at what happened or what was just reported yesterday, 332,503 COVID-19 cases, 2,256 new deaths having been reported yesterday. So we've been looking at an average of about 300,000 cases over the last 1 week. So you can imagine 10 days of 250 plus thousand cases per day. That's where you have the 3 million case increase in a week.
It's high testing as well. I actually focus more on the deaths. If you look at, you're talking about 2,000 deaths on average per day. So we are operating in the same realm as Brazil.
Absolutely. This is what's going on right now.
2,000 people dying every day. Yes, you are a billion plus, but 2,000 of you dying every day.
Exactly. But also the thing is, Eric, is that even you talk about that there's increased testing in India, this also means that more and more people are presenting to hospitals sick.
Yep.
So there's targeted testing that's going on, but then there are also people who are presenting with symptoms, and the shorter window period, they're getting sicker and they're dying faster. And so it's a problem here.
Actually, the indication of that particular, the severity of the situation was the step that the government took in practicing vaccine nationalism to the nth. Meaning, yes, we know we produce this vaccine on behalf of other people. Yes, we know we're the world's largest manufacturer of this vaccine, but we're not giving it to anybody.
We have an issue. We have a problem.
Which tells you they know it is even bigger than what we are talking about now.
Yeah.
It is of serious proportions. By the time politicians, and these are the leaders, take the step that may not augur well for them politically, by putting a halt to a religious ceremony that people consider to be very, very pivotal, the situation was cataclysmic. It wasn't that bad.
It's quite severe.
It is.
Looking at that, and then remember at some point we were talking about, look at India and how COVID is behaving in India. And if you compare it to countries in the West, look at Africa and how COVID is behaving in Africa. Now looking at what's happening in India, looking at the South African variant, start getting worried. Oh my God.
It's coming here.
Oh my goodness. Is it now?
This is now when we're going to see the reality of it?
Yeah.
But we already have the South African variant. We already have the UK variant.
In Kenya?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we
It
do.
has already been reported, because if you're talking about random sampling of people who are in the country, it has been noticed. It isn't rampant, but it is there. Now, remember the thing about these variants we're speaking about, they will also mutate and give us yet another variant.
Something else.
Stronger, new, improved, and resistant to all these things that we're talking about. Okay? And then there's the little detail that we keep talking about here, children. See, it was taken for granted that children are bulletproof with regards to the COVID. That is beginning to show that with these variants that we are seeing, children are not as safe as we had assumed. And so what that means is, even as we're talking about vaccinations for people who are older, the discussion about vaccinations for children has to also start taking center stage.
Yeah.
Essentially, vaccination for everybody.
Hey, this thing is serious. Let's take a break, though. At 6:15, Kenya's biggest conversation is already live streaming on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We will look at the weather and then start looking at the newspaper headlines shortly. Are you online? Say hello to us. A happy Friday to you. We will say hello to you shortly.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It's time to answer questions that are worthwhile. The Big Quiz Show is here. Register to play from the comfort of your home by SMSing the word JOIN to 23774. Then watch the live show on KTN every Sunday from 8 p.m. where you could have a chance to win a mealie. The fastest and most accurate answers are guaranteed to win. The Big Quiz Show, Sundays at 8 p.m. only on KTN. Kuza Broadcasting Awards 2021 is here. KTN Home has been selected as the People's Choice TV station, and we need your help to bring the award home. To vote for KTN Home as your favorite broadcaster in the People's Choice Award category, SMS the word Kuza to 15601 and follow the prompts. Voting ends on 23rd April 2021. Voting is absolutely free.
All right, it's light rain in parts of Nairobi. Heavy winds this morning at 17. It's going to go to highs of 24 today. A high chance of rain for most parts of today. Heavy thunderstorms are being reported in Nyeri at 15. Highs of 24. We'll see highs of 24 in Nakuru as well, where it's cloudy at 15. It's 15 as well in Eldoret. Highs of 24 and lows of 14. 19 and raining in Kisumu, some parts of it at least this morning at 19. Highs of 28 and lows of 20. Kakamega at 16 degrees is mostly cloudy. Highs of 25 and lows of 16. It's raining in Mombasa at 25. Highs of 32 and lows of 26. It's also raining in Malindi at 27. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 26. Mostly clear conditions in Kampala at 19. Highs of 25 today. It's also mostly clear for now in Dar es Salaam. We'll see highs of 32 and lows of 25. Chances of rain trickling in not too far from now. 10 degrees and clear in Johannesburg. Highs of 20 and lows of 9. It's cloudy in Lagos at 27. Highs of 32. We'll also see highs of 32 in Kinshasa, where it's raining this morning. Sunny conditions in Beijing going into early afternoon, going to highs of 22 today and lows of 12. It's clear in Paris at 6. That'll be the low for today, going to highs of 19. Friday reads clear in London, 3 degrees this early morning, highs of 15 and lows of 5. Thursday night in New York, it's 7 degrees and clear. Chance of heavy winds coming through in the Big Apple with highs of 10 and lows of 3.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, good morning, guys. And it looks like everybody's in here loud and clear. This is very interesting. Martin Munyagia says, loud and clear from Kabeteshire. Well, good morning, my lord. Mm-hmm. Levy Dennis is saying, I'm 10 minutes late, but I'm here eventually. Well, Karibu, my brother. Good morning, my favorites. Kilifi is well represented. Simon Villa is tuned in, as is Isaiah Ombura. Lindsay Lohana says, good morning, guys. Watching live from Mombasa, always locked. Karibu sana. And Muheba Vidal in Uganda says, good morning, guys. Most Ugandans speak Luganda. For example, Mwansunze Mutia means good morning. Remember that, okay?
Okay.
Mwansunza Mutia to you too.
Voila. Okay. Dagi Oguta says, good morning, my Situation Room people. It has been long. Well, it has. Where have you been? Let me greet you in the name of Jesus Christ and do Eric and Dr. Muga. I'm here with you now. Good conversation indeed. Welcome back, Dagi. Morning, guys. Getting you loud and clear from the Great Wall of Kino. Okay.
The Great Wall of Kino.
Yeah, there's a Great Wall of Kino.
Yes.
Okay. Robert Bogo's tuning from Mombasa. Good morning to you. Also tuning from Nyamira County, Getari villages, Boslin, and Reagan Yandinga. He calls himself the prodigal son, and he's back. Okay, welcome back. Bishop Goro Omokaya. Good morning, guys. Tuning from Getari village as well. Hey, these Getarians are up and awake early. JF Kennedy Ouma, Anaka loud and clear from the foot of Ngong Hills across the country. Everybody's tuning in this morning. So is Beda Ashley from Machakos. Kisumu Boss is where Geoffrey Mochama is tuned in from. And Michael Cheng says, good morning from Riverside in California.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for tuning in. Happy Friday. Yeah, keep it right here. We'll have conversations. Today we are going to talk about the Sexual Offences Act. We'll have a conversation with the judge of the High Court. We'll also have a conversation with somebody who works in the civil society on this whole hullabaloo about the Sexual Offences Act, mandatory minimum sentencing, the issue of, age of consent as well, issue that has been called the Romeo and Juliet consideration. So keep it right here for that. Plus, curfew. Is 8 p.m. a logical time to have the curfew? Okay. But first, let's hear today's proverb. Bwana Muga.
Yes. If you overtake a leader, you break your neck.
If you overtake a leader,
You break your neck.
You break your neck. That must have been devised by a leader. And to keep the subjects tamed. You want to stay alive. Control your
It is
ambition.
in the same league as the rattling of the snake and then what follows when that happens.
Surely. Threatening people, telling people there can be no alternative.
Well,
The alternative to leader is death.
Nope.
You break your neck, you die.
Actually, it isn't alternative. Look at what precedes it. Overtaking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Overtaking, okay, maybe it's a context.
Leader exists. You decide you are better leader.
You're a better leader.
And you want to do leader's job. You go ahead.
break your neck.
You try.
Yeah, no, you just go ahead.
That's what I'm trying. These are leaders who came up with this thing just to secure their position.
I don't think
To
so.
instill
Pre-
fear in people, to tell you
Instill
don't even
fear.
try and get
I
to my
actually
position.
don't think so. It is. If you're talking about leadership in an African context, and you're talking about an African proverb, which I would believe has history to it, then it means that the sort of leaders that you're referring to were not the democratic variety that we have here. No. These are leaders whose word was law.
Exactly.
He says something, deed done, dusted.
Try and come up with your own opinion.
Now
you
come
die.
up, you come up with your clever ideas. Let's put it this way: you face the consequences. Yes.
Okay, let's look at the headlines.
Okay,
This woman, Jane Muthoni, tell us about her.
Okay, so school principal Jane Muthoni, she's had suspected that her husband. Okay, so the headline is a teacher who killed her husband over a love affair. She had previously suspected that her husband Solomon Mwangi, also a school principal, was having a secret affair with another woman. Right?
Yep.
She then masterminded his murder in 2016. Yesterday, she was convicted of conspiracy, committing murder, and is now staring at a potential life imprisonment. It's a big story here. According to Justice Joe Ngugi, the killing was principally instigated by Jane Muthoni, who procured Isaac Nganga and another to execute the homicide pursuant to an agreement where she promised to pay the two for the killing. It's quite an interesting web of actions that took place here, right? So looking at the details of this story, it's been in court for some time. Of course, it was brought before. Sorry, I'm just trying to go to the correct page here to get the story. Give me 2 seconds.
Came to court in 2017.
Yes, came to court in 2017, where then she was, and the trial then began. So giving details of this. She was a former school principal, and she's staring at this life sentence now. High Court Judge Ngugi observed that although Muthoni did not commit the murder herself, she was the mastermind of the killing that occurred between November 6th and 11th, 2016. So what happened is that the plot to eliminate Mwangi started sometime in June of the year 2016, when Muthoni sought the services of Joseph Kariuki, one of the suspects who later became a prosecution witness following a plea bargain deal. On November 4th, 2016, a woman only identified as Damaris called Kariuki with a job offer. According to the judgment, Kariuki recruited two other people, Nelson Njiro and Isaac Nganga, to carry out the murder. Njiro disappeared shortly after Muthoni, Kariuki and Nganga were arrested. Kariuki gave a blow-by-blow account of how they planned and executed the murder. He was sentenced to 7 years for manslaughter. He testified that he recruited Njiro and Nganga on behalf of Muthoni, who was ready to pay for their services. The trio was paid 50,000 shillings in advance, with the balance to be settled when the killing was done. Kariuki also testified that Muthoni suspected her husband of having an affair with a woman who they referred to in court as MWK, or the M-Pesa lady. The man was to eliminate Mwangi's lover and then kill him. Justice Ngugi relied on 18 short text messages between Muthoni and Njiro, adduced as evidence to conclude that Muthoni had masterminded her husband's murder. Two experts, Sergeant Faisal Juma and an officer attached to Safaricom, and Vincent Mbabu, a security liaison officer at Airtel Kenya, played a crucial role in unearthing the elaborate scheme to kill Mwangi. They produced data for phones registered in the names of Karaoke, Jiro, and Mwangi. And they showed that the mobile number was linked to the registered name of Muthoni and one line registered to Njiro. So they spoke severally during the course of this whole plan, and they eventually did carry out the murder.
It is very, the story has been covered a number of times, and even the Daily Nation has that, and the chronology of what was happening. So the woman was suspecting that her husband has an affair with a woman who was working at a shop in Kiriaini town in Murang'a. She was teaching in Kiambu County. So she gets these guys, the killers, and they agree, I need you to kill both the lover and my husband. So first they go to the lover's shop in Kiraini, and she sells at an M-Pesa. They go and buy soda. The two killers are there. They go and buy soda. They are surveying. They come and tell her, hey, this one, we can't do it. Why? Because first, the shop is very close to the police station. And secondly, there are CCTV cameras because there's a bank nearby. So it'll be hard for us to do this. Next is the husband. And on the first time that they wanted to kill the husband, she goes home from her home in Kiambu to visit her husband for the weekend. And she goes with two killers in her tinted car. Gets to the house. The killers are waiting in the car. She has bought this sedative. She goes into the kitchen to prepare milk for her husband and put the sedative. Comes out like an hour later, because the guys are waiting for now the signal. Amelara kujeni tuchukue. Comes out and says, this thing didn't work.
This guy is not sleeping.
This guy is not falling asleep. He's chatting all over. And so let's do this. Let's call it off. She drives the guys from home to Kiriaini town for the night, and they meet there with the mastermind of this. And they agree, let's regroup. Let's take plan B. Just chill. Gives them 50K anyway. Tells them, you don't worry.
We're still on.
We are still on. 4 months later, she hatches now plan B. And this time, it's not about going to the man's home. It's about luring the man from the house. She tells the husband, you know that piece of land that we've been trying to buy around Committee? Why don't we go look? The seller is available. So the husband agrees. They leave home, come from Murang'a to Kiambu. They spend the night at her home at Shashiri, where she teaches. And there now she uses a stronger sedative. And that's where now they...
And for this one, he fell asleep. And then the murder took place.
Unfortunately, some of these guys who were used as the weapons, one of them went to court and sang like a...
Canary. He became a prosecution witness and told everything that had happened, down to the detail of the plan. Tulipewa, tukafanya.
Everything that he's saying is corroborated by phone records.
Text messages.
Done. Story done. Mrs. Jane Muthoni
is now awaiting sentencing.
This is done. That's it, basically. To get to that length of actually plotting such a murder in such great detail and not giving up.
4 months down the line, after you tried and it failed the first time, and you said, this one, relenting, I am not. I am resolute in this decision.
And she had told
people must pay.
And she had told him, okay, so you can't kill that woman. It's okay, you just wait. I'll come up with another plan of how I'll deal with her.
And that she did.
What?
There was a Russian novelist by the name of Fyodor Dostoevsky. This principle that the singing like a canary, in his book Crime and Punishment, he brings this notion out. He says, people who have done wrong, and committing a crime and murdering someone is definitely on the upper side of wrong, they will seek to have themselves punished. They will do things that will guarantee they get caught. That is how they sort out the wrong in their subconscious and conscious.
Yeah, because they look for that conscious escape.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this person figured, here, I'm going to say.
Yeah. Yes.
Remember the gentleman who went to the police the other day after his girlfriend he said, I'm the one who murdered her.
After he had killed his girlfriend.
Yes, I'm the one. And then, please jail me quickly.
Let's not even go to trial. As in, I'm here, I've taken a plea, I'm guilty, sentence me now.
And that one, unfortunately, we have to take you to Madari first.
Wow.
It's 6:30. Let's take a break, see how the roads look like this morning, and then we'll look at more headlines. And as we do that, jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. Have you logged on? Have you signed up for newsletters? Should we be getting new jobs alerts? Jobs.standardmedia.co.ke is where very many jobs are being advertised. So people who are seeking employees in various companies for various job functions are going onto jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. If you subscribe for job alerts, you'll ensure that you receive the latest relevant jobs from across the country. So don't be left out. Jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. Safaricom Kenya is looking for M-Pesa Africa Merchant Credit Product Manager. Do you think you qualify for that? City Muga's hand is up. Go to jobs.standardmedia.
I was touching
Click.
my hand.
Medical team leader. MSF is looking for that. Assistant claims manager. That is KCB Bank. A nurse or midwife. Merta Hospital is looking for nurse or midwife. Regional coordinator for South Rift and surrounding region. Kenya Association of Manufacturers is looking for that. Training and capacity specialist. The International Rescue Committee. Training and capacity advisor. Also International Rescue Committee. School nurses for Nova Pioneer. Tattoo girls. That is also a job. Look, go to jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. Look for a job that is actually applicable for you. Apply. And all the best. All the best. Good morning.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
The realest and craziest couple are now on your screens. Terrence and Chebi are bringing you top celebrities and trendsetters on Thursday Night Live. It's double the fun and double the laughter every Thursday at 10 p.m. on KTN Home.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Okay, we're going to have to deal with Friday morning traffic and the rain as well. It's raining heavily on the southern bypass between Gitaru and Langata Road. Please drive carefully, guys. Put your lights on and slow it down just a tad. We don't want to have to deal with any accidents in combination with the rain this morning. All right. So let's look at coming off of Thika Road this morning. It's not too bad actually getting in and out of the CBD. Outbound just past Westlands, it's picking up quite some on the 87. Remember, the construction is still going on there, guys, even early this morning and in the rain. Mombasa Road is the same thing. We're going to see traffic all the way from Cabanas today. Not so bad before that, but it's going to pick up quite some as we get towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. Remember, you're going towards Bagadi Way. You're going towards Langata Road because you can't go straight. All right, let's see what happens by the 29th in terms of how that traffic will look like. But for now, this morning, it's wet, it's raining, it's slippery. Be careful. We'll look at the traffic situation in just a bit. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text us on 40127.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
5 to 7. I know we're going to be looking at the other headlines, the political headlines. Oh, what's happening with BBI? Oh, what's happening with Kemsa investigations? Who has come out to say what? Before we do that, going just with the story of Jane Modoni and her plot to kill the husband and all these things and what happens in marriages. We looked at this story. It was in the Standard yesterday. Today, Nation has decided to give it more detail of what came out of the courts. The judge who said there's evidence that I'm not going to permit in this particular court because of how it was procured. This is in the case where a man known for this particular case as KK, and he's now a KKR, and his now estranged wife, RC, are in court over divorce. The man had gotten the services of a private investigator who had followed the wife and done some recordings, video recordings, some audio recordings, number one. Number two, they run a private company, and the man had gotten CCTV and audio recordings and tracking devices installed in the vehicle that the wife was using. So that was also part of the evidence. Number 3, they had installed CCTV cameras in their home. So at the gate, in the compound, in the living room, and also in the son's bedroom. So the judge says, those ones that you have procured through the private investigator, I am not going to admit here. That video evidence from the son's bedroom, I cannot admit it here. What is in the living room, it's fine, because you had basically agreed as a family unit that you want to install security features in your home. That I can admit. But the judge says, and this is Justice Mrima, he says there are things that we cannot do. It cannot be the norm that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can do as they please in obtaining adverse evidence against another. There must be order in commanding things both in the public realm as well as in private affairs. It's that order which is dictated upon by the Constitution and the law. He said mounting CCTV cameras and recording devices in order to record another person's private conversations and movements, unless legally permissible, is not only uncouth but least expected in the current constitutional dispensation. He says such amounts to an outright infringement of one's privacy and dignity. The judge said there are several lawful ways that the man could have chosen to obtain the information that he needed. For example, had he reported the matter to the police, investigations would have been undertaken in respect to an abortion that allegedly was procured by his wife, which is a criminal offense. Jurisprudence.
Yep.
Aye, now let's look at politics.
MP.
Before,
Okay,
no,
sorry.
you want to look at politics?
No, please go ahead.
Before we look
Before.
at politics,
Eh.
remember we had discussed this matter of the ARVs and the saga that was at the Mombasa port. ARVs arrive in January, still at the port. Well, now, good news. Headline, page 10 of The Nation, relief as counties begin getting HIV drugs from KEMSA. Okay. Kenyans with HIV/AIDS can finally sigh with relief after a consignment of antiretrovirals valued at 1.2 billion was released to counties yesterday. The drugs were taken to 31 counties, with the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority KEMSA saying the remaining 16 regions would get theirs next week. The supplies were from old stock donated by the President's Emergency Plan for HIV and AIDS Relief and the Global Fund. They were released after a public uproar following stockouts in most counties. This is the bit that I read this thing out for this particular bit. They were released after a public
Outcry.
Yes. The public like to think that they are helpless and they can do nothing. Not true. Not true. We laughed at the cyber warriors and said, I was among the people who said, surely, IMF, to listen to you. Even if you wake up in the morning. Well, I did wake up in the morning and IMF did listen. And not only did they listen, they responded. So, the Mwananchi's voice can be heard.
It can be.
Yes, indeed it can. Yes, it can.
The same KEMSA. Lawmakers have accused Jubilee Vice Chairperson David Murathe of influencing a 4 billion shilling tender to medical supplies. The National Assembly Public Investments Committee, investigating the 7.8 billion shilling KEMSA scandal, questioned Murathe's association with Kilig Limited. Okay, this is still going on apparently, just in case you thought that it had wrapped. This was a former director of the company yesterday testified that Murathe was approached to guarantee a loan. The Jubilee Party vice chairman was to appear before the committee alongside 2 other persons. Others were Wilbrod Gatay, a former director of Kilig Limited, and Chen Chow, the director of Entech Technology Company, which was to supply the firm with personal protective equipment. None of them showed up, surprise, surprise, choosing to instead send written submissions. In a written submission tabled before them, Vita MP Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir, Chow said he approached Murathe after his company failed to set a financing deal with Kilig. I knew that David Murathe and Wilbur Gattai know each other and that Murathe is a respectable, high-standing member of society, according to Chow's submission. In order to further safeguard and guarantee Entech's receivables under the supply contract and protect Entech's investment, I requested Murathe to be a guarantor for this transaction. The revelations made the committee to suspect that Murathe influenced the deal. Okay? It would seem that Murathe was brought in to guarantee and influence the process. He was brought in to ensure everything was paid, according to Araka MP TJ Kajwang. Kenyans have been asking for the big fish. It is very clear Now, only now, it is very clear who they are. The 4 billion shilling tender was choreographed by an influential person in the name of David Morathe, according to Wajir East MP Rashid Kasim.
Okay. So what's the irregularity here?
There's no irregularity. It's just that somebody in a high position of power was then able to influence this company getting the tender.
That's
you
an
see, that's an
irregularity.
allegation. Because, yes, I've been listening to this and I'm saying, we know Morathe has been presented as having a close association with the president. Okay? But what wrong was committed here? This is the thing that I need to understand.
Yeah. I think they just need to get to the bottom of it and ignore the politics for a bit. They may actually find some proper grounds if they focus on getting to the bottom of it. So somebody comes, just like other people who are applying for tenders, they come and they apply and they say, we can supply, and what's your capacity to supply? We're going to be able to supply this amount. So, okay, go bring. They go, they find, they subcontract somebody else to actually do the supplying, this Entech company. Then, did they supply? It's very important that we actually get to the bottom where we are showing the irregularity so that a case can hold. Otherwise, all these things are going to be drama.
I mean, yes.
And it'll end.
Start with the procurement process. Did they abrogate the procurement procedures? Okay, we know this company that we're talking about, Kilig, was a 2-month-old company. All right, just go through the process and tell us. The regularity starts here.
Yeah.
Start with procurement.
Yeah.
But then just so that I get it clear, was this the case where someone was passing by KEMSA?
No, that's a different one.
Okay, this one wasn't passing by KEMSA.
No.
This particular one entered KEMSA.
This one actually entered KEMSA.
Yep.
Passing by. Eric, so that thing of ours of passing by KEMSA, this one's not going to work, is it?
No, we are going to enter.
Okay.
No. As guys are doing the way we are going to enter
And have
KEMSA.
our temperature checked.
Kila kitu, and we sit down,
And
acting CEO's office, and we say,
Don't
CC.
forget to say a little prayer while you're at it.
yeah, we
No,
say,
in full glare of the public. Where is the wrong here? Because what seems to be implied, just because this man has a close association with the president, then yes,
then there was
That's the
influencing.
implication.
and there was wrong. Yes, there could be, but it really has to be proved.
Because what you're actually implying here is that there's some criminality. Threshold for a criminal case will be high because it's upon you to prove
Otherwise.
Yes.
that there was actually some criminal enterprise going on here.
Do you know why?
If politicians don't take care, they're just going to rush over this and say, you see now, there's a big fish. You see, we have named the people, and then this case will die. And we will be saying that, you see now what happens. People are taken, KEMSA, no, these cases go nowhere because investigations are... But it's because the parliamentary committee has not done its due diligence, a full, thorough job. Me, I'm just calling for a full, thorough job. It's okay. There's Kilig, there's Entech, there's David Morathe, there's
And there are others.
Broad, there's Mr. Zoo, and everybody
There are
else.
others. There are others.
Where there's something that needs to be taken to court, can you gather all the evidence? Can you have a watertight case? And then, because you're a parliamentary committee, give that to the investigative authorities and say, here is solid information that you can follow. That ends up in court.
See, by implication, if you bring in someone who has a close association with the president, you are implicating the president.
Yep.
So, yes, it makes for a juicy story. Yes, it does. But, again, if it goes the way that other cases have gone that we've seen the Senate investigating and then poof, like smoke, it's gone. And you're thinking, hey, all that noise, all that drama about this and the other and the right and the wrong and principles, suddenly with the report, you have nothing. So,
Nothing. We've got to keep a very close watch on what this committee will present. That's the bottom line. If they just come and give us all this drama up and forth and tell us, okay, you see the names, you see the big fish, you see, and then they have nothing tangible that can be processed and taken to court.
but Eric, I have to
What's
bring
it to
this
estate
in.
time?
Sometimes one has to then wonder whether when you look at the trends these things follow, are those summons really to get to the bottom of an issue, or are they a shakedown?
They're a shakedown. They're a shakedown. We've been told this by parliamentarians themselves, that this is how we make our money. Come on. It's 7:15. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Time for a break. We'll be looking at more headlines shortly.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Creativity makes the world go round. Today and even throughout history, we continue to solve the problems around us through a creative process. Everything around us is a product of creative minds, thinking differently and thinking outside the box. This year, as we explore the creative economy as an opportunity, we invite you to listen in as we engage a group of young and exceptional creative thinkers who are turning their craft into paid opportunities. Join us live on our Standard Digital website and Facebook page on 23rd of April from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come ready to listen and learn on ways you can leverage the year of a creative economy.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
13 to 7. So the other political stories, what we were discussing here,
Mornings
whole
done.
BBI shenanigans. Okay. So IEBC's chairman Wafula Chebukati released a statement yesterday, and he said the commission received from the BBI promoters 6 printed copies of the draft bill and the supporters' details, and that was on the 10th of December. Then, 26th January, the commission requested the BBI promoters for additional printed copies of the bill for onward transmission to the county assemblies. On that same date, those promoters, this is the BBI Secretariat, delivered to the commission 57 printed copies of the bill, out of which the commission took 47 copies to the county assemblies. That's what he says. We did not even photocopy anything. They brought, we told them, okay, now we need copies to take to the counties. They brought the copies, we sent to the counties. County assemblies are saying, you guys, you need to give us answers. Majority Leaders Caucus chairperson Peter Kilonzo and his County Assemblies Forum colleague David Kiplagat say the assemblies are not to blame for the errors identified by a joint committee of parliament scrutinizing the bill. They say county assemblies are not the authors of the BBI document. The bills were dispatched to us from one source. We sought public views, debated, passed or rejected, or in the case of Wasing issue, abstained from this particular one, and then submitted to the certificates to the National Assembly and the Senate. Instead of saying county assemblies debated the wrong document, we want to be told who dispatched different versions of the bills to the assemblies. Drama, drama, drama. Now here, point this. Secretariat is the one that brought the copies to the IEBC. Can Secretariat swear and prove that they brought same copies to the IEBC? That all the copies they presented to the IEBC were the same, and that 33, 34 were not different from 13. Can Secretariat prove this? Can IEBC demonstrate that they did not tamper at all with what they received from the Secretariat? Because it's clear that some game was actually played here and nobody noticed. That's what they want us to believe. Nobody was aware that this was taking place.
What if the choreography is even bigger than what we are saying here? What if, remember the story, well, the phrase red herring.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
What if all this is to focus our attention on the BBI and this supposed wrongdoing, while what ought to be the thing that we are concerned about? Let me explain why I'm saying this. We are in the midst of a serious crisis right now that has been brought about by COVID. We had a problem before, but now it's a crisis. We have issues that we'll be discussing later when we look at COVID and the curfews and what have you. But in essence, what is clear is that politicians are playing a certain game here. All right? Now, this game is being played amidst a crisis. It's reminiscent of the story that is said, now whether it's true or not has always been a subject of debate, of the Emperor Nero of Rome playing a fiddle or strumming a fiddle while Rome was burning.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, essentially, the story is summarized by this man was playing music when his people were suffering. Or it could also be looked at that he was an ineffectual leader in a time of crisis. Okay? Now, right now, with the issues we have, if we say that this is a game the politicians are playing, is this really the time for games? Or is it not the time for a national consensus and for understanding that certain things need to be put aside so that we can actually sort out? Or have the leaders become so insensitive to the plights of their people that what the games they want to play are the most important things for them? And everybody else and anything else is secondary. Yes, and inconsequential.
Their game is what should be occupying.
Yes, and it should occupy our minds as well and our lives. At this time when we are facing real issues, real problems, right now, is this really the time for all this?
So are you then proposing that this thing could have started a long time ago, knowing that they're going to use it at this such
That
point?
is what I'm saying. It's a perspective and it's an alternative thought that must be actually considered. And I'm going by history here, okay? I'm going by some of the things that we've seen happening. Look, when people say that the rallies that were heralded as BBI rallies were considered to be super spreaders, they were super spreaders. Forget being considered, all right?
It's true they were.
They were super spreaders. They were not the only spreaders, but they were. And why it takes a center stage in the discussion is because the people behind it are the people you expect to have understood that these things can bring about untold calamity and deaths that are needless. But they continued with them. So the optics was people in leadership setting a bad example. And in this case, a horribly terrible example.
Yes.
So, would one be wrong in saying that if you are to follow that trend and you see anything that is political, you say, no. Forget the reality of the situation. The likelihood of it being orchestrated is higher than it just being a reality.
It's diversionary, yeah?
Exactly. Because if people are insensitive to the point where they know and they're informed that these rallies can bring about death, these rallies can bring about incapacitation, and you simply go on with them, and none of them are to be spared. How on earth then do you now want to come and tell us that you have a concern? And just as we are having serious discussions about curfews and what we should do, suddenly another game appears. No.
Something is afoot.
Man, call it afoot, but it's now. No, not now. Not now. These things are tolerated, but this is not the time for these things. This is the time for a completely different discussion, a completely different perspective, and a completely different approach to issues. Not business as usual for the political leadership. No, it can't be.
But then, well, all that is happening. There are several things. Number one, yes, it could be that you're trying to divert our attention and giving us what's not important. But at the same time, as you're diverting our attention, you're dealing with something that's going to be very, very important and impact us greatly. So we can't really lose focus on these shenanigans that they're playing, because you can actually just lose focus. They play these kind of games. They come up with some agreement. Okay, it's okay. Let's harmonize the two BBIs that went to the county assemblies. Okay, so this one, what's the problem? It's 87.7, and this one is 98. Okay, let's just harmonize them and move on. And then they, in that process, insert extra clauses that have serious impact on us as a people.
What I'm saying is they are going to do it anyway if that is the plan. This is really what I'm saying.
Now we need to stand guard.
Yes, we do need to stand guard, but all I'm saying is, is there a level of insensitivity? Is there a point at which these leaders can pause and say, folks, does the country really need this at this time? The country, in my opinion, doesn't need this at this time. Okay?
This is not a constitutional moment.
What constitutional moment? This is a COVID moment. It's a people dying moment. It's a suffering moment. It's people can't act a living moment. Okay? Constitutional moment, which, what, where? I mean, for heaven's sake, we already have a constitution. It's working.
It's in place.
Yes, you want to bring in the BBI. We got that. We understood it. And we even said, okay, it sounds like it has some good things in it. But more drama at this point in time.
Unnecessary.
If people are enacting what politicians do at such times, a shakedown, saying, okay, folks, this is what we're... Look, shake yourselves down quietly, sort the thing out, and focus on the things that are important in the country.
What they should be focusing on is actually what we send them to do in Parliament.
Yes.
Look at representation on taxation.
Yes.
Because taxes are going to go up, and this is what MPs should be focusing on. All right, so is it true that the tax on LPG is likely to go up
It's going to
in
go
the new
up.
budget?
Yes.
It's going to go up.
So if these are the kind of things that are happening, so why don't we, as members of Parliament, focus on, okay, how do we cushion Kenyans? How do we make sure that the government is functioning? How do we push the government to reduce its own expenditures so that the people are cushioned? That's what they should be focusing on. This drama is just one thing here and there. It's one committee, it's a joint committee. That's what they're doing. What are the other committees of Parliament doing?
Anyone who
Apart from
calls themselves
summoning
a voter
Morale.
in this country, pay close attention to all these people who are in Parliament. And all of them are going to want to be re-elected. And consider what they're doing for you now, before you start thinking of all the nice things they'll tell you when election time comes. These aren't people who are interested in your welfare. If they aren't interested now in times of a crisis, how are they then going to be interested only at the time when you're supposed to vote them in?
You know, when I was saying this yesterday and even before that, this points to a serious breakdown in the system. Huh? I'm like a dog with a bone on this one, CT, like you keep saying. Because government has two sides. There is the administrative side, and that's a public service. And there's a political side. And those are the people we elect to run the government. The administrative side is supposed to be insulated somewhat from the shenanigans of politicians.
Yes.
Such that there are some things that this wheel will move irrespective of the politics of the day and who is in office. Now, when you get to a point where this machinery is actually being interfered with by the politicians to such a great extent that a government printer can print documents, at IEBC can receive and transmit, that a county assembly can receive and debate different documents, that this can go to Parliament and stay for so long before it's noticed by anybody, that shows you that there's a serious breakdown. And when you keep asking about, okay, now the government should be focusing on healthcare right now, focusing on children are going to school, how is our education system wired? That system that should be working has been messed up by the political system. And we need to point that out and say, look, if we don't fix the machine that should be remaining as a machine, if we don't fix that, it doesn't matter who we have. It's already broken. It's already been infiltrated by the wrong people. Basically, you have put adulterated fuel into this vehicle. Engine, knock. We have to change the engine. Okay, so keep it right here. In the next hour, we talk about the Sexual Offences Act. There have been conversations lately about the Sexual Offences Act. Some clauses that members of the judiciary have said, look, we need to review this. So judicial officers from magistrates to judges have said, let's look at this. There are some activists who've said, let's look at this. There are those that are saying, do not touch that law. It has a purpose. So what exactly is the conversation around this? We are going to be joined by Justice Luka Kimaru, who will be telling us his thoughts on that. And also we'll be talking to somebody in the civil society. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, it's building up on Mombasa Road this morning, and it is coming down also in drizzles on Mombasa Road and other parts of the city this morning, so we're going to have to look out for that one. Traffic is building up in various areas. Jogger Road is one of them, coming from industrial area, and then also coming off down from Hamza. As you head to the roundabout and then onto Landis Road, is also slowing down. The rain is making other traffic slow down considerably. So this one you have to be careful this morning, guys, even as we try to navigate these roads. All right. The southern bypass is what takes you to town a lot quicker than staying on Mombasa Road. It'll take you out there at a greater speed, but of course we still have to be careful. We'll take a look at what's happening on Thika Road, coming from Kiambu Road and then joining the Pangani underpass. Is not too painstaking this morning. It's looking pretty good. As you get through, you should be all right. So let's keep an eye on things. We don't have any craziness happening just yet, but it's likely to pick up as we go along. So we'll be here for it, letting you know how to get through. Talk to us as well. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text us on 40127. See how we can keep things moving this Friday morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
A very good morning to you, and how are you doing? Thank you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room this lovely Friday morning. It's the 23rd day of April 2021. CT Muga, welcome everybody on KTN Home who's joining us for the next 2 hours.
Welcome. Today's proverb. If you overtake a leader, you break your neck.
If you overtake a leader, you break your neck.
Yes.
Okay.
Put in...
know your place, know your position.
If you want to break your neck,
Overtake a leader.
If that is your goal, if that is what you want to do, the path to that particular eventuality is clear.
Off with your head.
Yep.
Okay. So, Ndu, let's talk about the Sexual Offences Act. A lot of conversations have taken place lately.
For sure. I mean, over the last week or the last 2 weeks, there have been...
renewed.
More renewed, more pointed, targeted conversations about the Sexual Offences Act, right? So we know this is an act that came into place in 2010, about 12 years ago, when so many things were happening at that time. We saw an increase in sexual violence in the country, and legislators coming together to say, you know what, we cannot continue to allow this to happen. What kind of punishment must we bring out? What kind of recourse must be taken in accordance with the law, or actually creating new laws to make sure that those who perpetuate these acts are actually brought to book. And so around that time where there was this whole movement, and when we saw the rise of these cases, is about the time that the act came into place. And it was dealing with a new thing. It was a novel operation when it came to actually now punishment for these acts. Over time, we've realized that it's been a little bit bumpy in terms of expending justice because there were certain things that were not taken into consideration. Crimes, quote unquote, that would be then committed between minors or non-crimes, situations that occurred between minors that were not taken into consideration in terms of the criminality of an incident. And over time, these conversations have become more robust. Who then are we actually punishing? Are we looking at the merits and demerits of having this blanket judgment on regardless of the cases? And so because of that, over the last few years, people have been saying, you know what, in as much as we had a law that has come in to deal with primarily gender-based violence and acts of rape and other, crimes like this, there are certain things and certain details that we do not look at that end up not really for good. Now, this conversation then has catapulted into the last 2 weeks, where folks have now been talking about things like a lot more, like the age of consent, and then what really happens in cases of relations between two consenting individuals and things like this. So, let's amend the law is what the call has been, number one. And let us amend the law so that we will be able to deal case by case and to look at the details and know then what to do. Because right now, as the law, as it stands, you have blanket sentencing, for example, that's given. Regardless of what happens, regardless of things like age and other determining factors, the law is the law. One blanket punishment is given without looking at certain details. So now the amendments that are being proposed are to do just that. That in certain cases, you would be able to look at certain factors that will then determine the course of action that will be taken. But right now, as it stands, it would seem as if you're punishing with one wide blanket as opposed to looking at the details. So those conversations are happening right now. They are very, very robust, and it looks like Sexual Offences Act might come to the place where it will be amended.
Okay, so, and it's coming from the courts, it's coming from court users. There are those that are for a review of some of these clauses, and there are those that are saying, no way, don't touch any of them.
Yes.
So let's hear from actually those that have applied the Sexual Offences Act. One of them is Justice Luka Kimaru of the High Court. And even recently, he's been talking about this and saying, look, we have seen people brought before our courts, and we have seen how we are required to apply this particular law. This law has some clauses that where the judge does not even have wiggle room. There's a minimum mandatory sentence. As long as you have found this person to be guilty, you first of all must sentence them to a minimum of X. Okay? And then there are issues of how do we determine, are you allowed as a judicial officer to look at context of what's before you? And I think the conversation that we've been hearing from the judicial officers is sometimes this law is actually not giving the judicial officer the leeway to apply the law as they understand and looking at the context of the evidence that's being presented before them. In cases where you're saying, examples, somebody goes to court and they've been taken to court because you had sex with a minor, but the person who is being accused is also a minor. And the judge is sitting there and, okay, so how did you guys end up here? And it turns out from the judge's own deduction is that there was some bit of consent. So how do I deal with this?
Does it not also bring in the question of capacity? And also, what is it? What are the norms? What are the variables that you use in considering capacity and determining the age? Is it what has been known through research and understanding of the developmental capacities of the mind? Is it the physical capacities of the individual? Do they also take in cultural and social norms? But more importantly, since we're talking about young people who fall into the category of adolescents, are we also looking at their rights as children? Because these are children. And what are the standards that we're using? Are we using the UN Convention that talks about children's rights? Are we using the children's rights as set in our constitution? This is a complex issue. And I think any judge, any court officer who has to deal with this thing, I think grapples with very many issues before they actually even come to a conclusion. And for this to be a debate where there is need to change certain things, they've realized that the robust nature of a law that takes care of this complex situation, that robustness somehow is lacking in what we currently have. And there is need for change to be brought into being. So that even as people talk, they talk within the boundaries of understanding that the variables that should be considered when putting into practice such a law have actually been put into law.
The Honorable Justice Luka Kimaru joins us on the phone now. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, we're not able to have a conversation with you via video link because of technical challenges here and there. We shall not say where here is or there.
Thank you, sir.
So, Judge, recently you were among the judicial officers who've been quoted as raising the issue of the Sexual Offences Act and advocating for some amendments to this Sexual Offences Act. Just give us a brief overview of what the law says presently and what you have experienced, and then what then you say we may need to review.
Okay, thank you, sir. The Sexual Offences Act was actually enacted in the year 2006, and it came into effect in 2007. Most of the provisions related to enhancing sentences for the sentences that were then very lenient under the penal code. We had sentences to do with defilement coming to 5 years or 10 years imprisonment. But those sentences were rightly, in my view, enhanced.
Yep.
And what was the thinking behind enhancing them?
The thinking behind enhancing them was that you would find that a child of less than 10 years had been defiled, and he would be sentenced to serve 10 years imprisonment or even 5 years imprisonment. And that one caused an injustice in the community and uproar in the community. So the enhancement of those sentences, to me, were justified in the circumstances whereby young minors of less than 10 years or even less than 15 years were defiled by adults. And that's, I have to point out that, were defiled by adults. So the justification behind those tough sentences, in my view, were proper, and I support it wholeheartedly. Where the problem occurred was what I call the law of unintended consequences. Now, what happened is that teenage sex, which is a social issue, was criminalized. And that's where we have a lot of injustice and a lot of disquiet in our courts in terms of determining cases. I'll give you an example. You have this girl who is 15 years old and a half, 15 and a half years old. She had a problem with her mother. She had this boy who is slightly about to reach 18 years old, who was running a shop on behalf. He had just finished his Form 4. He was running a shop on behalf of his uncle in Thika. This boy sneaks there, and this girl sneaks there and stays with that boy.
Yep.
And the mother reports the matter to the police. They look for the girl. They find him in the house of that boy, and the boy is arrested and is charged with defilement and is convicted and is sentenced to 15 years imprisonment.
How old was the boy?
18.
The boy was just about 18 years old, but you see, by the time he was tried in court, he had turned 18.
He was an adult.
He was an adult.
Wow.
So that is where now, and don't forget, he did not solicit for this girl to go to his house. It is the girl herself who disagreed with the mother and went to his house. So those are some of the issues which courts have to grapple with, and especially this issue of teenage sexuality, whereby there is no force used. And I have to be clear on that. Where a teenager uses force, to me, that is also should be punished. But this is where you can call, in quotes, consent, whereby these teenagers think they're in love with each other and they engage in that sexual activity. How do we deal with it? Do we deal with it as a criminal issue, or do we deal with it as a social issue, as a social problem?
So now what we're saying, the way the law is currently, Judge, is that you're tied, that you can't really look at these elements that we are talking about according to the law. That you cannot look, for example, at this 18-year-old boy who did not go and solicit from this girl, neither did he take anything from her by force, right? But according to the law and the way in which it stands right now, you have no choice but to convict this boy who just turned 18. You have no choice but to convict him and not look at all these other factors that could play out.
Precisely, ma'am, because the challenge we have is that under the Sexual Act, any child below the age of 18, any human being below the age of 18, which is a child, has no capacity to give consent. Yes, so even legally speaking, any person, any human being, any child under the age of 18 has no capacity to give consent. Yet the reality is that these things happen.
Let me ask the question that I'd alluded to earlier on when we were looking at the preamble for this discussion. How then do you balance this with the rights that are accorded children within our Constitution?
That's where the challenge is, sir. Because what happens is that for the past 6 years, up to 31st of December 2020, I was the chairman of a body called Community Service Orders, which used to deal with issues of non-custodial sentences. And in the course of it, I visited virtually all the prisons in the Republic of Kenya. And it is very sad to find these young people jailed in prison, and yet they are just starting their lives. You're having these 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and in some cases 20-year-olds who had relationships with these guys who are 16, 17, 15. And yet it was, in quotes, like I said, in quotes, consensual relationship. And in some cases, they even live together for some time. In some communities, in some communities in our country, parents encourage their daughters to get married at some certain age, which is when they have matured, like 14, 15. And they live with these people. They live with these boys. And then when a problem occurs, like lack of payment of dowry, that's the time parents report to the police. And this may be a defilement case. So I agree with this. Those social constructs have become criminalized. People use the criminal law, especially the Sexual Offences Act, to settle some social issues, whereby otherwise, if it had not happened, those persons would still be living together as husband and wife.
So, Judge, if you look at the law then, are you saying that you as a judge are bound by this law and how you look at those matters, such that if such a matter is brought before you, there's only one way in which you can look at it and say, this is somebody who is underage and this is somebody who is above the age of consent, and so therefore there's a sexual offense that has been committed here?
Yes, thank you, sir. What basically happens is that what the courts look at is the age of the victim. In this case, you can call the victim. I'm talking specifically, and let me be clear, I'm talking about teenage sexuality. I'm not talking about the other extremes of sexual offenses.
Yep.
Yeah, so the courts look at the age of the victim. They don't look at even the age of the perpetrator. And that's why what that gentleman has mentioned, the rights of the person who is said to be the perpetrator are infringed if you are to use even the Children's Act and the International Rights of the Child Convention. That's what happens, and that's what has caused a lot of injustice in this country, and that's why many judges, including myself, and even members of the community, are of the view that law, as it relates to this teenage sexuality, the sexual offense, should be amended. And something like what we have in the state of Delaware in America called the Romeo and Juliet law should be brought, whereby if the age of the victim and the age of the perpetrator is not more than 4 years, then another way is used to deal with the issue, something which is called diversion. You divert them from the prisons and maybe use other methods to deal with them.
Judge, there are certain folk who insist that it stays as it is. And I'm just thinking back to what was happening at the time when this act was brought into and when it was established, that sexual violence had become quite rampant. And at that time, there needed to be something that was going to rein in all of this action and make sure that the perpetrators were brought to book. Is it possible that at that time, the concentration or the focus really was to protect victims or would-be victims of these acts, and did not look at the fact that the sexual act itself was not necessarily wrought by violence? Is it possible that at that time, what was being looked at was the victim, and it was looking at a violent sexual act only and not taking into consideration other things that could have been happening in circumstance?
Yes, ma'am. That could have been a possibility. In 2006, I was a judge. I've been a judge for 18 years. So I understand the debate that went on during that time, and I agreed with the debate. The issue is this: when you have these people who perpetrate sexual violence on children, especially who are adults, somebody who's 25 years old, somebody who's 30 years old, these people should be punished, and they should be punished severely. That's what I support, and I support it wholeheartedly. Even as I speak now, I support it. You cannot have a 25-year-old having an affair with a 15-year-old and saying that the girl consented. That one is there's an element of an adult taking advantage of a child. But where there is a problem is this issue of this teenage sexuality. That is where we are having a challenge. These other ones, they are very straightforward. Anybody who is 30 years old and then you defile a child who is 10 years old, that is madness. We should put you in jail, and we should put you in jail for life, as the sexual offences says, and I agree with it wholeheartedly.
But Judge, where is your cutoff? So you're saying someone who's 25 years old having sex with a teenager, that person should go to jail. Where is your cutoff?
Yes.
Is it at the age of 20 or is it 19?
My cutoff would be teenagers.
Okay.
You get the point. My cutoff would be these 18-year-olds, these 19-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
And possibly, because you see the trial process takes a year, sometimes it takes 2 years. These people, by the time they are being sentenced, they are already in that threshold of those years. So to me, my cutoff, I'm dealing with the injustice that is occasioned to these teenagers, whose age difference between him and the girl is not more than 4 years.
What if I raise this issue, and this is just looking at it from a context of a 19-year-old is somebody who many of them finished school a year earlier. They're looking to joining into college, or they've gone into college. They're still living independent on their parents, so they are still children in very many ways if you look at it. A 20-year-old, same. So if a 20-year-old has a sexual affair with an 18-year-old, would that be an offense? If you look at it, basically, you're talking about a second-year student having sexual relations with somebody who has cleared fourth form.
If she's 18?
Yes.
No,
17. 17.
If she's 17.
Below the age of 18.
Let me give you a case, a live case, which was tried in Nakuru.
Yes.
This girl finished Form 4. It was one day to her 18th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And then she decided that's what she told her friends. She decided that she had to lose her virginity before she became 18.
Yeah.
And then she went to a party whereby this boy was.
Mm-hmm.
And there was sexual intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
And then because she did not go home that evening, the parents got worried. They looked for her, they couldn't find her. And then eventually they reported the matter to the police. And then by the time she was found the following morning, the father was very aggressive and took her to the hospital. And they checked her and they found that she had sexual intercourse. And because she was a virgin, it was obvious that something had happened.
Yeah.
The father, the issue was taken and the boy was charged.
How old was the boy?
19.
Okay.
So you get the point. It was one day to the 18th birthday. Now you can imagine how the law can be very arbitrary. Just because it was one day before the 18th birthday, she's taken to be a child.
That one, Judge, I am with you, and I see that. I'm saying now, imagine if this boy was 20, still a student, still in my books, very much and in very many cases, practically dependent on their parent, their children.
Yes.
They are 20. Would you look at them differently just because they're above the age of teenage?
Now, when you go to the Sexual Offences Act, it is so arbitrary that issue of 18 years is just that. We do not look at the developmental stages, because I think there is a study which has been done that the developmental stages of a human being, you become fully adult at age 21, 22. Okay? And even taking an example of what happens in this country, a child of even 24 is still dependent on the parents if he's still a university student.
Yes.
So I agree with you, Mr. Latif, but we are looking at a law which is completely fixated on the 18th year. It does not talk about those developmental issues of what constitutes an adult, or who has capacity to do what, or who can be able to even maintain a relationship.
Thank you very much, Judge. Let's take a break at this point, and then we'll continue this conversation. After the break, you'll give us what you feel should be the amendments that come in and what should be considered, and then how can we solve the societal challenges that come with this in very many other ways. So, for example, we're looking at cultural issues of marriage. We are looking at how teenagers are engaging in sexual activities and affairs, and all these things, how you as a judge, from all those years of experience, what you have seen, how would you propose that we go forward? This is a conversation we're having with the Honorable Judge Luka Kimaru of the High Court of Kenya. Sexual Offences Act. What are the amendments that are required for this law? Are there any amendments that are required? Keep it right here. We are live on KTN Home. We are on SpiceFM, and we are live streaming the show on our digital platforms, SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Remember, GenerationNextChallenge.com. Register your children today if between the ages of kindergarten to 11th grade, and they're at home now. It's holiday season. What are they doing? Develop their math, computational skills using the GenerationNextChallenge.com. They log on to the Kenya National Challenge. In the Kenya National Challenge, they find several challenges on a daily basis, interacting with other children from around the country. They win some badges. At the end of this, they stand a chance of participating in a global challenge with other children from other parts of the world. Beautiful way to keep them engaged, beautiful way to keep them busy, and also empowering the students to understand math and connecting it to real life. Good morning.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Hello.
Halo, umesikia?
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu acha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial *550*1# to read the standard e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line, and stay up to date for a reliable source with over 100 years of experience with no additional data charges.
You better be ready. Every Friday at 7:30 p.m. only on KTN Home. It's the Shining Stars TV show moment. Get ready to be inspired. Get ready to be part of an exciting journey of discovery and learning with talented children.
Held me down, but I got up. Get ready, 'cause I had enough.
Get ready to be entertained by super amazing young talent. Because hii ni yetu, from our own talented stars, hosted by #1 TV host, Sleepy David. Shining Stars TV show, every Friday, 7:30 p.m. only on KTN Home. Be part of the journey.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Creativity makes the world go round. Today and even throughout history, we continue to solve the problems around us through a creative process. Everything around us is a product of creative minds, thinking differently and thinking outside the box. This year, as we explore the creative economy as an opportunity, we invite you to listen in as we engage a group of young and exceptional creative thinkers who are turning their craft into paid opportunities. Join us live on our standard digital website and Facebook page on 23rd of April from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come ready to listen and learn on ways you can leverage.
All right, light rain in most parts of Nairobi today. 17 degrees. It's going to go to highs of 25. 24 will be the high in Nyeri. Heavy thunderstorms still coming down at 15. 15 also and cloudy in Nakuru with highs of 24. Magic number is still 15 in Eldoret. Highs of 24 and lows of 14. Partly sunny conditions in Kisumu now. Highs of 28 and lows of 19. And it's also sunny in Kakamega at 17. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 16 today. 26 will be the low in Mombasa. It's what it is currently, and rain showers for most parts of the morning. It's also raining in Malindi at 27, highs of 31 and lows of 26. Partly sunny conditions in Kampala at 20, with highs of 25 and lows of 19. It's going to be mostly sunny in Dar es Salaam as well at 25, at least for now. Chance of rain later with highs of 32 and lows of 25. Clear skies in Johannesburg at 10, highs of 20 and lows of 9. It's mostly clear in Lagos at 27, highs of 32 and lows of 26, and heavy thunderstorms in Kinshasa now at 24. That'll be the low for today. It'll go to highs of 32.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up
All right,
your
with those wet
luck.
conditions in most parts of the city today. We're looking at some traffic on Mombasa Road today, outbound. Inbound as well, it's moving quite slowly, especially at the roundabout of Bunyala. So remember, you're going left and then going down Bunyala out through Baricha Road and onto Workshop Road. And then onto Mombasa Road, if that's the direction you're heading in. The ICD Road is also helping folks out this morning. You'll then connect to the southern bypass into the city without an issue. It'll take you there really quickly. There's a bit of a clog up right around Jogo Road coming from industrial area and then getting onto Landis. It's slow, but it's moving, especially right around the roundabout of the city stadium. Okay? So let's keep an eye on how things open up. Coming out of Westlands, visibility is poor, but we're going to watch out for this one as well. Coming from Limuru Road, use Wangari Maathai Road to get into the city. Much quicker, less of a headache. And that's what we want this morning, isn't it?
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Kenya's biggest conversation continues 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. In the Situation Room this and every weekday morning, you have Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, C.T. Muga. Joining us on the line is the Honourable Justice Luka Kimaru of the High Court of Kenya. We are talking about the Sexual Offences Act. He's among those judges who have said, look, we have experienced this. Let's look at the law again. There are some cases where we may need to have some revisions. City, you have a question for His Lordship.
Yes, I do. You see, he's put it, he's laid it out fairly clearly. The law is what it is as we speak. But as Kenyans say, moving forward, when one is seeking to have change, are they going to consider, or have they already considered, bringing in people who understand the functions of the brain, neuroscientists, who can then explain the various nuances that occur with the development of the brain? I know people think that you're mature at 18. Actually, you are not. If you look at the studies that have dealt with the brain, it's 25. That's the point at which even your brain has matured, and the frontal cortex, this part of the brain that deals with assessing all this information, helping you achieve goals and moving forward, and decision making. And there are those who even argue that it still develops even as you well into your 20s. Now, so if you set the benchmark at 18, the question I'm asking, Justice, is why 18? Why not 20? Why not 21? Because in reality, what are the differences? Okay, why not even 17?
Thank you, sir. Like I said, we are working on with what are known as international standards. And international standards in all the legal conventions that we have considers a human being of less than 18 years to be a child. But when you talk about developmental issues, I agree with you, sir. There are people even who are 21, 22, and you can say they are still immature in terms of their thinking and in terms of all that is done. So as you have mentioned, studies have been done, and also we know when you go to prison and you see these people, I wish I would have an opportunity to take you to prison and you see some of these people. You'd find that most of them are fairly young mentally. And you are having their opportunities in life messed up, snapped out because of something which, in their mind, they thought it was they were doing a consensual thing, or it was a developmental challenge which they were having at that time. And I think we should look at this issue of teenage sexuality as a social problem.
Actually, Justice, that is the reason why I brought in this particular aspect of it, because, as you say correctly, you look at these people and you say, but these are children, okay?
Yes.
And we determine that because of the development of their brains and their capacities, okay?
Yes.
Now, so even the decision-making, you see, when your brain is developed, and when they say the prefrontal cortex is fully developed, you are able to take in a lot of information, assess it, and make a decision that would be, should we say, wholesome, okay? When one is younger, you can't do that. You think you're making the right decision, but you actually don't have the capacity to have a fuller picture as you ought to. And if the law doesn't take this into consideration, the injustice we are speaking of will still occur.
I agree with you entirely, sir. I agree with you 100%. And basically what I would like to point out is that the reason why we are having these injustice appearing now apparent is because our laws, especially some of the laws which address some of our social ills, they are targeted towards punishment. They are not targeted towards resolving that problem. That's where the challenge is.
What would you change? So let's say that these amendments that now are, or rather, even this whole process, let's say it's considered now, and that is the point that we are at. What would you say right now needs to be changed, and how?
We have already made proposals to a committee which was established by Justice Maraga, which looked at the whole gamut of our criminal justice system. And I think even civil society are in agreement with what we are saying. The issue of teenage sexuality should not be criminalized. The law should be amended. The Sexual Offence Act should be amended in such a way that this sexual offense between these teenagers should be dealt with by diverting them. You divert them maybe by counseling. You divert them maybe by coming up with what we call non-custodial measures, which necessarily do not involve these young adults going to prison, and so forth and so on. That's what I've made a proposal to that effect, and even we have made a proposal to that effect. And I think if it is amended to that effect, I think to me I would be satisfied.
There's the other side, the cultural side. And as we know, there are very many cultures that still practice the children marriages as a norm. Is this the law to deal with that? Because you'll find there are cases where somebody has actually been brought before your court and they are being accused of having committed the sexual offense, and yet it was actually a marriage that went through two families, that went through an entire community, and it's what they do. That's what they practice. How do you deal with that?
Thank you, sir. I think, Mr. Latif, you must be a young man.
I am fairly young.
You must be fairly young.
I am young.
If you are there when that Sexual Offences Act was debated in 2006, part of what was in that bill was to declare unlawful those early marriages. And unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever you can call it, members of parliament from some parts of this country were vehemently opposed to it. And that time, the person who was the mover of the motion was my senior sister, Lady Justice Njoki Ndungu. And the person who was seconding it was the late Justice Mutula Kilonzo. So for them to get the bill passed, they had to remove some of the provisions. And if you remember very well, for those of us who were there at that time, it was a very hot debate.
Yes.
Because this issue of sexual offences cuts across cultures, social issues, and all those issues that your colleague has mentioned.
So how then because that issue is still hot today. One of the reasons why the members of parliament would so vehemently stand up to oppose it is because they know, going back home, this is what happens, and this is what my electorate consider the norm. And so they were saying, if you come and criminalize culture, what are you doing? So it's still being practiced. You will find in a case where a teenager is actually being, is actually being betrothed to somebody who's older than 18, let's say a 20, 21, 22-year-old, and this person is basically not doing this to commit a sexual offense. It's not rape. they are marrying a girl and families are aware. The community is aware. How do we deal with that?
Sir, the function of law, we have two functions of law. One of it is to regulate behavior in society. The other one is to encourage certain modern behaviors which you want to occur in society. I'll give you an example. When the government comes with the law to deal with female genital mutilation, or what in some communities called circumcision of females,
Yes.
and they ban it, it's because the government wants to come up with progressive policies to address some of these cultural challenges, which it finds it's inimical to the rights of women and young girls.
Yes.
So you see, that's where the challenge is. You are having a situation whereby the law is being passed as a progressive measure to deal with certain cultural practices which they consider to be harmful to the society. So to me, having been involved in this issue of youth for a very long time, I'm of the view that should be given every opportunity to get the best in their life. And they can only do it if they are given an opportunity to go to school and finish school.
Yeah.
So when you marry them off at age 14, age 15, to me, I think you are killing off their opportunities. So I'm against that early marriages because of that aspect of, I look at the rights of this child. Let this child be given the opportunity at life by getting all that he can get or she can get by going to school at that age.
Justice, I have to ask this question. Huh?
Yes.
It is what you're saying I also support and I agree with, but what is it that our judicial system does? For instance, when this matter was being brought before Parliament, had you taken the time to sensitize these people and explain to them in detail why it is you're bringing this thing and the importance of it? Had time been given for other arms of government to help? Because, for instance, people who fight against female genital mutilation, they do a lot of sensitization and they go about this business, they explain it. Because if you want to change a norm that people have had, they have to understand why it is they need to change it.
So you know, even there's a doctor who brought a case in 2018 in court, a constitutional reference seeking to have the law of female genital mutilation removed.
Yes. Because what was at the base of argument? Rights. Is that not so?
Basically, what I'm saying that when you are talking about these issues that cut across culture and social issues,
yes,
you at that time when the Sexual Offence Act was being enacted in 2006, it is not that it was the first time that an attempt had been made to amend the law. There was a lot of resistance which took many years, and I really commend Lady Justice Joaquin Dungu and the late Mutula Kilonzo for rallying MPs to pass that law, because that law would not have passed if they had not burnt literally the midnight oil to have that law passed.
You know, let me explain why it is I am actually pushing this particular issue. If you look, for instance, in this country and go a little further back into history, something as simple as educating the girl child was an issue.
Yes.
We don't consider it an issue now, but it had to take some steps and people needed to see the benefits of it for not just to encourage it, but consider it to be normal, where not letting a child go to school now became what was abnormal. Now, child marriages, I understand the thinking behind it from the communities that actually practice it, but many of them don't understand why they shouldn't practice it. That's why I'm asking the question. Yes, even if you enact a law and people who are supposed to abide by it don't seem to understand why that law exists, they will keep abrogating that law.
And actually, to add on to that, my lord, look, with the law criminalizing FGM, like you've said, the government came up with programs to work with the community so that we can stop FGM. Has the government come up with programs to work with communities so that you can stop early child marriages? And what's the success of those programs? I think we should be looking at it from all that holistic side and saying, If the government has a policy and it has programs that are working with this, then the law is supportive. If the law is working in isolation, everything else is not going to work.
I agree with you, sir. One thing about the law, and that is one of the issues we learn in universities in the legal theory, is that the law follows the reality.
Yeah.
When an act is enacted, it's a reaction to a certain existing position in society. Now, this issue of child marriages, it's tied even to religious issues with some communities.
Yeah.
So, to me, when you bring such issues, you will find that politics intervenes. And when politics intervenes, we have policies in the Ministry of Education which talks about outlawing child marriages, and even part of that Sexual Offences Act, literally, if you literally apply it, it outlaws early child marriages, because any sexual contact with a young child is called defilement. But you see, the reality is that some of these early marriages are as a result of economic issues. They're as a result of certain cultural practices, which it will take time. I'll give you an example of FGM. Where this thing is continuing, FGM is continuing now, you will always find that the girl literacy rate is low. The girl child literacy rate is low.
True.
When you go to communities, I'll give where I come from, Nandi County. Nandi County, because of issues of religion and education, FGM is literally a thing of the past. But you go to some other counties whereby the education of the child girl child is low, those FGM is still being perpetrated. So I agree with your colleague that actually a holistic approach should be taken to this thing, towards addressing this scourge. And part of it is to me, is education and opening up opportunities for all children so that they're able to address this issue. Because a child who is in school, I'll give an example of a county I went to in November. When a girl child is in school, she's in secondary school, she will not undergo FGM because she's in school.
Right.
Yes.
Justice, Latif's friend is actually called Muga.
Yes, sir. sorry, sir.
Oh, no.
He's old.
Sir, by the way, Justice, this idea of being called sir is really nice. Please continue.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
It's not every day a judge is going to call me sir. In fact, the first time I've ever been called sir in this show. So please continue. Thank you. But the point I wanted to raise here was some of these things that we're talking about sexual offenses. You're talking about a human activity, a human urge that you really can't legislate against. It doesn't matter what you do. But then I'm going back to where our legislation discussions are conducted and where they are enacted, Parliament. And I'm looking at some of the laws that they have passed, not just unanimously, but quickly. If I look at bringing in a cultural aspect and a certain legal perspective that existed, polygamy.
Yes.
That one was passed.
But sir, let me just correct you.
Correct me, please.
The law, the marriage, the what we call the Marriage Act now, which was passed in 2014. Do you know it took how many years for it to be passed? It was recommended by a commission in 1967. And part of the law which was passed, it was to deal with marriage and succession. The Law of Succession Act was passed in 1971. But because of issues, it was stayed for 10 years. It came into effect in 1981. And then this issue of marriage took another 40 years. So you see these social issues.
But Justice, in those 40 years, if you married traditionally, it was considered legal, was it not?
It was considered legal.
If you had a second wife and your marriage was traditional, it was considered legal, was it not?
It was.
Yes. So there was that leeway that people had, but when it now became entrenched, it was like an amalgamation of those two statutes, and it became one. This is what I'm saying. You see, I know it's complex as a layman. I understand that it's complex. But because it's complex, I think this on this issue, I'm a dog with a bone. We shouldn't spare any nuance or any effort in trying to consider any and everything that you must in this matter, because if we are this punitive with the lives of people who are young and people whose decision-making process at that age leads them to do the things they do the way they do, then the injustice is greater than I can actually imagine.
I agree with you, sir. I agree with you entirely. The challenge we have is this. I want you to consider, sir, how laws are passed in Parliament.
Please.
It is a horse trading. For you to have an act go through, a bill which is prepared by a mover or a proposer, at the end of the process, it's not the same bill which started.
Yes.
Yes, that's why you should have a meeting of minds, what I call consensus, between all the players, so that when the bill is taken to Parliament, it is taken to Parliament when there is already a consensus. But if you take it to Parliament before there is consensus, the bill will be mutilated, and something which will come out there, to use Mr. Muga's words, it will be a mongrel. It will not be a purebred dog.
Sure. It looks like a process then that needs to happen in quite a number of areas, around the country. But if we're looking at this specifically now, coming back to the Sexual Offences Act, there's this side which, it has been made very crystal clear to us this morning that, we're looking at, saying teenage sexuality should not be criminalized, essentially, those relations that are had between those two. There is the other side who would come in and argue and say, you know what, it doesn't matter who it is, for example, that a daughter gets into a relation with, that they're saying the other party ought to know better. How do you handle, or how should the contrary argument then be handled? How has it been handled in the caucuses that you've had before the amendment of this has come about, or the proposed amendment rather?
You see, for this, madam, for this consensus to be reached, it has taken. The Sexual Offences Act was enacted in 2006. I'm talking about these issues 15 years later. And don't forget, things to do with sex are very emotive.
Yes,
they're very emotive. So that at some point, sense comes after time, and I think this is the right time to say that let's give these teenagers a chance. And you see, it is the boy child who is affected with this issue.
Yes,
you can imagine you have a 17-year-old boy and a 16-year-old boy having sex. The boy is punished, and the girl is let off the hook. So there's an element of discrimination there also, which is unconstitutional. But I'll not delve into it. Basically, I'm concerned with both. I don't want both of them to go to jail. I want both of them to be given non-custodial measures, whereby they'll have an opportunity to at life, complete their education, and have a shot at life. That's where I come in strongly.
Thank you very much. Justice Luka Kimaru, thank you for joining us this morning and for articulating the issues so well so that people can understand what exactly is it that judges are saying about this particular piece of legislation. And then when it comes up now for public debate, we'll be able to contribute constructively. Asante sana, Judge.
You are most welcome, sir. And Madam also, thank you very much
for
inviting me.
Asante.
Justice, thank you very, very much.
You're most welcome, sir.
All right. 5 minutes to 8 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. In the next hour, we'll be speaking with the head of Physicians for Human Rights Kenya office, Naitore Nyamu, still looking at the Sexual Offences Act, looking at the problem areas and trying to understand, where do we move from here? As we take this break, let's remind you about jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. That's jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. This portal where you go and find all the jobs that have been listed by various advertisers and employers. Medical team leader for MSF. M-Pesa Africa Merchant Credit Product Manager. Safaricom is looking for you. Orthopedic and plaster technologist at Master Hospital. KCB Bank Kenya is looking for an assistant claims manager. Nurses midwife at the Mater Hospital. The sales executive at Spectrum Network International, training and capacity specialist at International Rescue Committee, and many other jobs. Jobs.standardmedia.co.ke. And make sure you subscribe for job alerts to ensure that you receive the latest relevant jobs from across the country on your mobile phone, that is via SMS or via email. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, SpiceFM KE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
The Spice Drive with Monique. The official soundtrack of getting you where you need to be. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
I am talking about teenagers here. And I am looking at teenagers and what is happening. And he said, go to many prison facilities today. You will find young men, boys who've been jailed on account of sexual offense. And if you look at the case, you see that there was, in many cases, there was consent. What they thought was consent. It is a young boy and a young girl engaging in a consensual act. The law does not recognize their consent, but they do. So what happens is that you find young boys who have been sent to prison for 15 years.
Yeah.
You're a teenager, you are 17. You go in for 15 years, you come out at 32. You did not even finish fourth form.
You didn't get a chance at life.
Not only do you come out of prison, you come up a hardened criminal.
Totally. And very bitter.
Yes.
With the system and with the community.
Yes.
With everybody. And I think this is important that then the conversation is fast-tracked. So yes, former Chief Justice David Maraga formed that commission. There's another task force that's been set up by the Attorney General that's also looking at this particular matter. They're looking at what needs to happen. I think they just need to fast-track this.
What I really appreciate is the fact that civil society is involved in this, because a lot of times these organizations are on the ground having discussions with communities, having discussions with individuals. Their input is absolutely important in this process, because it would be that the law and the judicial officers were being bullish about this, but it has been with consensus, and it has been, before we amend a thing, let's make sure that we are all on the same page.
But even as we amend it, consideration for those who are already in prison.
Yes.
Should there not be a program that, because these are people who can be rehabilitated, these are people who don't need to end up being people who are not just bitter, but who will probably now go into full-time crime as a result of what they in their minds will consider an injustice.
They'll find a very difficult time trying to adjust. And that leaves with only very limited options, among them crime.
Well, you heard what the judge himself said. There are many times where they've had to sentence, and if they had a choice, they would not have.
They would not.
They would not have.
Yeah. Well, keep it right here. The conversation continues in the next hour. We'll open up the phone lines after we have a bit of a conversation with Naitora Nyamu. She is the head of Physicians for Human Rights Kenya office. We are looking at the problem areas of the Sexual Offences Act and what needs to happen, what needs to be done. Also some considerations as well. Does the Sexual Offences Act look at marital rape, for instance? And how do you define marital rape? How do you get to a point where you're saying, so yes, there was a sexual offence committed within a marriage?
There are those who think that it isn't possible for there to be rape in a marriage.
Yep.
And yet there
it
is.
does happen.
It happens.
Yes.
8 a.m. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, the rain's still coming down right now. Mombasa Road will still have some traffic as it's getting into the city centre, but I don't think we have anything crazy at the moment. Coming off Thika Road, in and out of the city centre also, it looks pretty good. Joga Road and then certain parts of industrial area. We're looking at that Lunga Likoni area also. Some traffic there is moving slowly, and some parts of the roads have been flooded, and so where there used to be road is filled with water now, so everybody needs to be extra careful as we ply the route this morning. Talk to us about where you might be stuck. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text us on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
8, Kenya's biggest conversation continues, and we thank you very much for joining us into the third hour of the show. We are here every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Mr. Muga, sir, today's proverb.
It's very good. Keep it up.
Keep it up, huh?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
If you overtake a leader, you break your neck.
If you overtake a leader, you break your neck. Again, I am just saying this proverb was devised by leaders who wanted to protect their realms.
Even people who just observed how leaders went about their business realized.
Oh, this is what happens.
This one. I think compliance is an easier way to go about this thing.
You overtake a leader.
That's it.
Neck goes broken. So it's not necessarily a positive proverb, this one.
Not necessarily a positive proverb, but it represents reality.
It's true. I remember the Idi Amin documentary and how he said, okay, so we're going to race with our ministers. And he got in the pool. He got in the pool and swam diagonally. You try and swim faster than him. You try and swim faster than him. Not only will you lose your job, you lose your neck.
Nicholas. Nicholas. We are good. So, this conversation continues at... What is that? Acetieno. Estieno.
Estineo.
Estineo. As Estinio. Okay. Justice Luka Kimaru has expounded the Sexual Offences Act 2006 on SpiceFM, and I agree with him that act needs a total overhaul. It's a mongrel, an act that criminalized teenage sex. There was also a lawyer who posted a comment and giving their own experience here, saying what they noticed with the act. I did a case in the children's court. Accused 15-year-old boy, complainant 17-year-old girl. I represented the boy. The boy was acquitted, but he had slept in the cells and missed school for 2 months and was mentally traumatized. That law is a bad law. Imagine.
Actually, I like what he has brought in. Because I wanted to ask this now, what happens if the girl is older? And in this case, the girl was definitely older.
Yep.
But what happened to the girl?
Nothing.
The offense was committed by the boy. That's what even the judge said. In cases where you're both teenagers, you're both children, it is the boy who faces the punishment.
We remember we had this rare case of a lady in Kisumu who had a male friend who was a border rider.
Yep.
Turns out the chap was 17.
Yep.
Yes.
The lady was jailed.
Yes.
And I listened and I read the defense said, but look, you couldn't tell.
She did not know.
No, she didn't know.
And if you actually look at some 17-year-old, go to any secondary school, you find a heavily built young man with a full face of beard and an Adam's apple the size of a head down their throat.
Yes, and a roaring voice.
Yeah.
Only they're 17.
You can't even tell that this person is 17. As we continue the conversation, we'll be having a conversation now with the head of Physicians for Human Rights, Naitore Nyambo. But let's go to the phone lines and hear input from Joseph, who's calling in from Nairobi. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We're fine, thank you.
if we can a little bit concentrate on that question of the previous caller about why the boy went to jail and the girl never did. I'll come to the add-on. Normally, if you have a wife and you guys have 3 children and mkona ile mali mko naye, mkiachana, if she files a divorce, you'll have to give her half of everything, right?
I don't know.
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Okay. But most probably.
Well, it depends on how it's presented in court for divorce. It really does depend on the factors that are brought before the court.
Okay. What I've never heard of.
Yes.
If she files a divorce.
Joseph, there's a problem with your line. And I think also the issues that you're raising now refer to the Marriage Act and the other laws on marital property and all. Today we are focusing mainly on the Sexual Offences Act and looking at how it's affecting the society. So I think on the day that we have issues of, and that we can actually bring in some of these lawyers, looking at the judgment from the court the other day, the precedent-setting judgment, which said, if you're married and you're going to divorce, the only thing that will be considered during the division of property will be property acquired during marriage. What you came with is still yours. So that's a conversation that we will have. So back to the issue of the Sexual Offences Act. Very many angles to this. There's what we have talked about, the teenage sexuality. There's the other issue, the cultural practices. This law was initially trying also to criminalize underage marriage, but there's still that issue. Then there's the other issue of the age differences, right? And I think among the things that the judges have been saying is, let's look at if it is 2 teenagers. Do you say that a 19-year-old having sex with a 13-year-old will be treated the same as a 19-year-old having sex with a 17-year-old? And I think the judges are coming out and saying, no, even within those circumstances, it shouldn't be the same. And then there are all those other issues about sexual offense happening elsewhere and how you go to court to get justice in sexual offense cases. We have seen cases where somebody has actually gone through, has experienced rape. And then they go to court, and because of the threshold, they don't get justice. And creating of that awareness, which is something that CT were raising, how do you create awareness? How do you facilitate a victim of rape to get justice from the very beginning, from the custody of the evidence, from the point they report the case to a police officer, from a point they go to a physician, that's a doctor, to what they get the physician, to what they then go and present in court, because that's where you lose your case.
Well, what do we see with this very famous case of just about 18 months ago when 2 gentlemen had been convicted of this crime? And then essentially this entire case will be reheard because of 1 sheet of witness evidence that was not presented before the court. They had been convicted. It would have seen that this girl who was gang raped would have gotten justice, all right? But then something like that, something that you will see as menial as that, essentially got these guys off. And this case will be retried just on that. So now you're looking at, if a crime against somebody like that has been committed, you have to cover every single base and every single detail to make sure it's not just cut and dry that somebody has said, I have been raped, and then it goes to court and evidence is presented. You must cover every single detail in order to get justice.
Yeah, true.
You have to do much more than bear this heavy burden of having been violated.
And it's a very big thing to make sure that you also facilitate the victim. Because a victim of sexual violence is somebody who already is going through some trauma.
They live with that violation.
They are going through trauma as they seek this justice. How do you facilitate them? How do you make sure that as they go to a police station, they are able to report this and it's received well? As they go to a health clinic, they're able to report this, they're treated well, and all this evidence is actually being handled properly.
Eric, there's also this other matter, even when you're talking about our police service or us as a society. At what point do you divorce our understanding of the law from our cultural practices, our cultural mindset, and the things we've grown up believing to be the norm? How many times have you heard of cases where somebody goes to the police to complain about something and they have a completely different perspective on that particular matter?
That's true.
And that has nothing to do with the law. It's just that they look at it and say, a wife goes to complain, for instance, about the husband. You're ni ya nyumbani.
Mambo ya nyumbani. Ongelesheni wazee.
Yes, but the issue has spilled over. That's why that person is at the police station. But then this understanding that it's a domestic issue. So, and yet, what has brought this person to the police station is violence.
True.
And the same could happen to a man.
Yep.
And the question will be, surely, bibi yako anakupiga?
Unapigwa na bibi.
Yeah, now you
What
see,
kind of a man are you?
what sort of person are you? And yet the matter that is, how do we then bring about an understanding? You know, each and every of our counties has a court of justice. We have judicial officers. This is not an impossible feat to get people to understand these changes. We've seen when the government goes full throttle in trying to get something done and how they go about making sure that people understand it. It's something that can be done.
It can also be done. Before we have a conversation with our next guest, let's hear from Solomon in Mombasa. Good morning, Solomon.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm very fine. Just as today you have discussed a very sensitive matter in our society.
Yep.
Where sex, first of all, there is no sex education, both in our education system and in our cultural practices. So when it comes to gender violence, especially when it comes to rape, it's very sensitive, especially when it comes to minors. Because you see, minors, depending on how these cases go to court and how justice is being done, you find a lot of cases there's usually some ill motive at some point. And I'll say an example of a colleague that happened where his son, hii mchezo tulikuwa afanya kidogo cha mama na cha baba, they were caught up. The neighbor who happens to be the mother of the girl presented that case to court. But how that case was presented, the judge came to realize there is a dispute of land. And there is a lot of issue that came about between the differences between the two families. As when it comes to minors, it becomes very, very sensitive.
Yeah.
And a lot of issues come up regarding, some may be true, some may not be true. Because you see, the evidence regarding rape, it's very, especially when it comes to a minor, for them to express themselves because of fear, they don't know what to say. And especially when it comes to neighbors and family members. Secondly, this is the most important thing, is how we parent our kids. I've seen a scenario where a son rapes a woman, they're over 18, rapes a woman, but you see the mother of the son goes and bail out the son, saying that the son cannot do these things. And they were caught red-handed doing so, and there were witnesses. So even me, I wonder, and you're going to bail out a criminal. You see, that person happens to be a criminal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you find how yes, the emotions involved, but let justice prevail. If someone is wrong, is wrong.
That's true. Thank you very much, Solomon. Asante sana. Let's bring in our guest now. Naitore Nyamu is the head of Physicians for Human Rights. She joins us now on the line. Good morning, Naitore.
Good morning, Eric.
Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the Situation Room. So let's start off by understanding what Physicians for Human Rights does. Who are you?
Thank you so much. I mean, it's a pleasure to be here. So Physicians for Human Rights is an international non-governmental organization that uses science and medicine in all its interventions and approaches. And more so, when you look at cases of sexual and gender-based violence, we look at how can we use science and medicine and the law to ensure that there is concrete evidence that is collected, concrete evidence that is documented, and concrete evidence that is presented to court to ensure that there is justice for the survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, and accountability for the perpetrators who are committing these crimes.
So who are you? Are you doctors?
So Physicians for Human Rights was established by doctors, but our organization has both doctors and lawyers, all professionals, because as you know, when it comes to cases of sexual and gender-based violence, we require a multi-sectoral approach in addressing the gaps, in addressing some of the challenges in implementation of the laws. Personally, I'm a human rights lawyer, but I work with other colleagues who are in the medical profession, communication, who are in who work as psychiatrists, counselors, etc., etc. Yeah.
What are the challenges? Some of the challenges, the glaring challenges that are encountered in collecting evidence in cases of sexual violence?
Numerous challenges, Eric, and this starts right from when the violation occurs. The advice that we normally give and the awareness that we are trying to create is that should you be in the unfortunate event that you are sexually violated, please go to a medical or healthcare facility within 72 hours. Those 72 hours are very crucial when it comes to collecting evidence, when it comes even to getting the requisite medical care for any survivor of sexual violence. But the challenges are at times because either survivors are not aware of what they ought to do. Some of them even immediately take a bath because these are heinous violations. You want to be done with it. They take a bath, and in the process of that, evidence is lost. Others maybe may store the clothes that they were wearing when the violation took place in a bag that tampers with the evidence, or when evidence is collected at the healthcare facility, then it's not stored well, it's not documented well. We've seen instances where the forms that are used in collecting evidence, the post-rape care forms, are not well filled, they're not articulately filled. And when such forms or documents come to court, then they are missing links, they are missing gaps. We see instances where Part B of the form is not filled in. The PRC form has both Part A and Part B, and the Part B contains the psychosocial support or psychological assessment of the survivor. We've seen instances where that form is left blank. And the moment that such forms are left blank or such areas are left blank, then that has a huge impact in terms of the evidence that's brought in court, in terms of what the judge or the magistrate has to use when it comes to making a determination.
Looking at the law and what it requires, Naitori now, there seems that, unfortunately, there are quite a number of people who have been deemed as criminals, but if we want to look at it properly, what is being suggested now, that they could then fall in the category of victim, right? So even now, in collecting all of this evidence and trying to, build a case where this kind of violence does take place, for you, because you're obviously involved in this conversation when it comes to the amendment of the Act, of the Sexual Offences Act, where do you see the problem areas are here and the grey areas that need some ironing out for those who would be criminals but fall in the space of victims, perhaps?
So the Sexual Offences Act is an act that was enacted in 2006. I think because of the implementation that has taken place or has not taken place, there is need to re-examine after between 06 and let's say 2020 what has happened, what's working in that act and what's not acting. So I totally believe there's need to re-examine or amend this statute. One of the major issues that has come out as a result of the judgment that we are getting from court is as far as Section 8 is concerned. Section 8 speaks to defilement, and it terms defilement as penetration, any offense that leads to penetration of the genital organs between a child, a minor. And our laws define a minor as anyone below the age of 18 years. Now, in the last couple of years, there have emerged numerous cases of two minors, either between a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, and what I believe ought to happen, even as we seek to have the laws revised or amended, is at the moment is each case that comes to court should not have a blanket decision. The judges or the magistrate ought to look at the situation of each case by case. The issue of consent is another key problem in as far as the Sexual Offences Act is concerned. And for me, before even we say whether minors can consent or cannot consent, we need to first of all interrogate whether minors are in a position understand what consent is, because Section 42 of the Sexual Offences Act defines what consent is. It's agreeing by choice and having that mental capability to understand the consequences of the choices that you're making. Are our adolescents, teenagers in a position to consent, especially in Kenya, whereby we've absolutely buried our heads in the sand when it comes to comprehensive sexuality education? We've not done that as a country. We've refused to do it, yet we've seen what's coming out of that. So I personally believe that at the moment, minors do not have the incredible information. They've not gone through a comprehensive sexuality education to get to a point where they know what consent is. But it's sexual relations between adolescents is a reality, and we need to address it in the right way.
You know, I hear what you're saying, and if I were to just speak anecdotally, I would agree with you. But if you're talking about sexual education, if we just leave the adolescents and the young people for a while, are adults in this country, would you say that generally they have a comprehensive understanding of sexual education on which to base their decisions on? Is sex a subject that adults freely discuss among themselves, not with their children? Is sex a matter that adults will actually honestly want to talk about and look at? Or is it something that you would rather somebody else discussed on your behalf, or you'd rather it was spoken of in the dark? Because what the parents believe will affect what the children know.
Totally. I'm in agreement with you.
Okay, I've just begun. I was actually continuing.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted you to agree with me first before I go on to the next point. Thank you very much for agreeing with me. The point I want to raise is this. When we look at the discussion of sex, sexuality, children, and their understanding, if you look at HIV and AIDS and everything that pertains to it, young adolescents, women specifically, who had engaged in sex and who perhaps acquired the virus through sex, some who even had children, there is a space that was provided for them, and they were referred to as mature minors. And they were allowed to make decisions. They didn't need the consent of the parents. Now, I am simply saying that understanding was arrived at when you realize this person has a child, they are under the statutory age, and yet everything about them conforms to what you would expect from an adult. As for understanding, now this is where the conundrum comes in. What is the benchmark? What is this thing that we must look for and confirm and determine before we say somebody has the capacity to actually give consent? What is it?
Nairobi, may I kindly request that you respond to this after this break, because we need to go to a break now at 25 minutes past 8 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation. We are speaking with Nairobi Nyamu, Head of Physicians for Human Rights Kenya. We are talking about the Sexual Offences Act. Everything around it. Time for amending it. What areas need to be amended? What else needs to happen to make sure that, it's not just about the law. We need to actually fight the rising cases of sexual offences in our society. What is it that needs to happen to address the challenges that we are facing? Kenya's biggest conversation on KTN Home, on SpiceFM, and online. We will be back shortly.
...24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
We've been all through it, We go to school, study hard, get the much-deserved grades, and celebrate our graduation. Then reality hits us. We get to the job market and we simply don't know where to start off. Thankfully, by visiting jobs.standardmedia.co.ke, your next career breakthrough could be a click away. Get the best in career advice, employment opportunities, internships, part-time jobs, CV writing, and interview coaching. Give your career the much-needed lift on jobs.standardmedia.co.ke.
As the Kenyans are roared into the home straight here. 4 Kenyan queens have lit up this balmy Bahamian night.
It's where the rivalry is unmatched, where the soul meets the track, where the great are distinguished from the good. An arena where the records are broken.
A new world record. It's not just been beaten, it's been obliterated.
A stage where the legends are born. For Team Kenya, the Olympics is more than just a sport. It is our tradition. It's an event that has put Kenya on the roadmap. The Standard Group lets you watch every minute and every action live in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Because we live for Team Kenya. We live for the game. At Standard Group, sports lives here.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
24 teams, 12 host cities, 6 groups, all battling for one trophy. The long-awaited Euro 2020 is here at last upon us. The fans might not be within touching distance.
Good cross, Giroud attacks it and scores, and France are ahead.
But the atmosphere will only get to a fever pitch. From the 11th of June to the 11th of July, catch the tackles, the goals, and all your favorite football stars as
Lightning in most parts of Nairobi at 16. That'll be the low for today, going to highs of 25. Chances of this rain continuing through most of the day into the weekend, quite high. Light rain in Nyeri at 16, highs of 24 and lows of 15. 15 will also be the low in Nakuru, where it's 17 at the moment and cloudy, going to highs of 24. It'll also be at a high of 24 in Eldoret, where it's mostly cloudy at 18. Mostly sunny conditions at 21 in Kisumu, going to highs of 28 and lows of 19. It's sunny in Kakamega, highs will be 25 today. We're looking at lows of 26 in Mombasa, where the rain has already begun and continuing for most parts of the morning. Same in Malindi at 27. We'll see lows of 26 today. Rain showers in Kampala at 20, highs of 25 and lows of 19. It's mostly sunny in Dar es Salaam at 27. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 25. Sunny in Joburg at 12, highs of 20 and lows of 9. Mostly clear conditions in Lagos at 26. That'll be the low for today with highs of 32. It's heavy in rain in Kinshasa at 23, highs of 32. It'll come back down to lows of 24.
Spice FM. Nyeri.
Spice and everything nice. All right. Okay. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Mombasa Road is actually quite so outbound to the city this morning, and a lot of folks using the southern bypass to get out of that traffic that you will experience as you head towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. So take that into consideration. The Lekoni interchange, as you then try to join the southern bypass and other parts of Mombasa Road, also is moving very slowly. Outbound, using the same route into industrial area out into the city, also is taking some time. The rain is slowing things down considerably, but it definitely will open up. We're still in the middle of traffic hour. Let's see how this opens up during the day. Wangari Maathai Road is the one to use as you headed into the city coming from Thika Road. And don't go get stuck right around Ngara and out towards the Globe Cinema overpass. Coming from Limuru Road, right around Village Market, it slows down a little bit as well. But you should be okay leaving there. Let's talk in a bit and see how this has changed. SpiceFM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
In the room is CT Muga. Ndu Oko and Eric Latif. We're talking about the Sexual Offences Act. So what is it that needs to stay? What can be changed? And then how do we address all the issues that come out with regards to sexual offences in the country? There's the issue of evidence gathering. There's the issue of supporting the survivors of sexual offences, even beyond taking people to court, the perpetrators to court. How do we ensure there is justice beyond that and there's support for the survivors beyond that? As we went to the break, Mr. Muga, sir, you were asking Naitoria a question. If maybe you could just repeat it in summary so she can just remember and to realign with her answer.
She remembers very well. I'm going to ask if she remembers. Then if she doesn't, then I will then ask the question again.
No, I can answer.
Yes.
Please.
For us to get to that point,
yes,
we need to first make sure that the adolescents or the teenagers, all the minors, are in a place whereby they fully appreciate the decisions that they are making and the impact of that decision that they are going to make. And this will come by a lot of awareness creation, a lot of sensitization. At the moment, many adolescents have access to the internet, online information, and these are some of the things that can be used to ensure that adolescents are well equipped to make a decision before we even think about amending or lowering the age of consent. But just to come back to your earlier conversation around adults, whether they also speak about sex or not, the comprehensive sexuality education, it's not something can be left alone to the teachers in school. It also has to be done by parents. Parents ought to be the authority for their teenagers or their adolescents, but that cannot start when these people turn 14 or 15. It has to be gradual. It has to be age-appropriate, comprehensive sexuality education, so that whatever the teachers do are complementing what the parents or the guardians are doing at home.
I understand fully what you're saying. You see, the reference I was making, and you're spot on, was to our social or cultural norms that in many, many ways are often a hindrance to discussing matters around sex. Our whole perspective on how sex should be managed and how it should be discussed and everything around it. And even though we are in the 21st century, some of these norms still bind us very strongly. Now, what I would venture to say is that when we talk of adolescents, you may find that their understanding of sex or education around sex is perhaps more explicit than even their own parents, because they have exposure to information in a way that their parents never had. And they consume this information and they talk among themselves. And one of the things that they will certainly not do, they will not often tell their parents exactly what they know. So there's a gap here that needs to be bridged if the things surrounding this particular topic have to be understood. Because one, there's a topic you have with children generally, then there's a topic that must be had with the girl child and the boy child. Who is it who communicates to the boy child that this issue of rape is something that should never even feature in their minds? Who is it that teaches them how to respect women? You start by respecting maybe your sister or girls. Who teaches this? Is it the parents? And if it's the parents, who takes the key role here? Is it the mother or is it the father? Now, I bring this in because African families, by and large, you will find that the mother plays a far more important role in bringing up the children than the father. And so they end up being a far more influential person in the lives of these children than the father. How do you bridge this?
Socialization of how the boys and the girls are socialized in the community plays a huge role.
Yes.
In the sense that a sex debut for a boy is seen as being a man or manhood. It's something that's celebrated. For women and girls, something that's frowned upon.
Yeah.
Such that you're not socialized, even like for the boys, they're not socialized or taught or educated that there are lines that you cannot cross when it comes to your sexual relations. That it needs to be very clear from the word go that any relation that does not have consent, or where there hasn't been consent, then that is going to be deemed or to be criminal. I mean, that's what our laws are providing. And in terms of whether it's the mother or the father who wants to do that, I think both of them ought to do that. We cannot, yes, our African culture is there, but we cannot continue using that as a reason as to why the adolescents, the teenagers that we have, are not getting the right education. Previously, issues such as female genital mutilation were conversations that could not be had in public. But now we are seeing even elders in places where female genital mutilation is practiced are the ones who are coming to the forefront to say that we need to deal away with this retrogressive practice in our community because of the numerous implications that it has on the lives of our girls and children. The same way that we've gotten to a point whereby those who are practicing or those who believe in this practice are speaking against it, is the same thing that we can do for cases of sexual violence or defilement. Let it be said that for a man or for a boy, respect a woman or a girl, not because they are your sister, your mother, or your cousin, but because because you ought to respect them as a fellow human being. And also the socialization for the boys that having sex or with this anyone or everyone makes you a man. Those are some of the practice or the norms that we need to rewrite and re-educate the boys and the girls also need to be educated in terms of what is consent to them, because one of the things that we were proposing in terms of amending the Sexual Offences Act are the Romeo and Juliet clauses. But before we get to those, introducing the Romeo and Juliet clauses into our laws, we need to be at a place whereby there is the adolescents are in a position to appreciate the decisions that they are making, because sexual encounter is a decision that they have to make, and it's one that has a lifelong impact in terms of their lives. Yeah.
So I hear you. Are you almost saying then that this sexual education must be made mandatory then across the country? But then it would seem as if those then who teach also must be taught once again, because even I'm horrified in some of the things that I hear adults teaching young children about sex. I'm truly horrified to hear some of the untruths then that are being passed on to children. So if we're saying then in order to change this law, there are certain prerequisites that then must come into place. But even those then that would feed the information, seems to me that there needs to be a total retraining in that aspect as well, whereby we're still not even comfortable to have these discussions. But then we're getting into a place where we're getting entangled with the law, and then young people are getting in trouble because they do not know, or even if they do know, it has not been explained to them in a proper way. It just seems that there's this whole ball of confusion that needs to be sorted out on so many different levels. How do we tackle that?
There's need for retraining, and we will look at most of the schools whereby what we refer as counseling teachers. These teachers are teachers who are deemed they have a better relationship with the students or the pupils, but most of them are not. Most of them even have the requisite skills to offer the relevant counseling or the relevant advice or guidance. And I'm saying this with all due respect to the teachers who've taken up this role, because of numerous reasons. We've not gotten the skilled teachers who have those counseling skills, who can offer the requisite psychosocial support. Now, for comprehensive sexuality education to be introduced in schools, and it ought to be introduced like yesterday, the curriculum needs to cater for all ages. Yeah, it needs to be age appropriate. It needs to uphold the best interest of a child. It needs to be backed up from a human rights perspective. And the teachers who are doing this also need to go for training. We've done this before in many other instances. We've seen the massive investment that the government has taken in as far as information around COVID-19 is concerned. We've seen the same thing in as far as HIV and AIDS is concerned. There were billboards everywhere, there are pamphlets or booklets everywhere on the same. We can do the same for comprehensive sexuality education, and it would start with the teachers who are giving it doing the same. But also parents need also to go through some sort of schooling in terms of educating, informing their children on what is sex education, what does it entail. Age appropriate should be one of the cornerstones for any education that we are offering the teenagers or the adolescents. But what we need to recognize and realize, and I would like to underscore this as much as possible, before we get to that discussion of lowering the age of consent, let us first of all make sure that these other aspects are in place, that the adolescents have the right information to make any informed decision. I know the biggest debate has been comparison in terms of what other countries are doing or what other countries have done in terms of the age of consent is concerned. But we have a stark difference. Those other countries have put in place comprehensive sexuality education. They have support services for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. To date, still, most survivors of sexual violence do not get psychosocial support. And any case of sexual violence traumatizes this survivor, even an adult. You can now imagine what sort of traumatization that minors go through when they are sexually violated. And the Sexual Offences Act is an incredible act by all means, because it also protects minors and adults at the same, but more so for minors, protects them from sex predators who may not think through before even they engage in any sexual relations with minors. So we need to strike a balance, protecting the minors, but also realizing that adolescents have their own agents. As maybe the 14, the 16-year-old, the 18-year-old, and we can see the cases that have come in court and how they've been decided.
Yep.
We cannot continue burying our head in the sand as far as sexual relations among adolescents is concerned.
When you talk about the psychosocial support, which is a critical part of this, in terms of the support that is accorded to the victims, in the cases where we have children, and let's say we are just talking about now these adolescents and teenagers and who are involved and engaged in sexual acts, what kind of handling should they get? Let's assume that yes, we have even enacted the Romeo and Juliet clauses, but what kind of psychosocial support should these children get? Because remember, by the time it becomes an issue, it means that what they were doing and they were not doing it publicly has come to light as young children, and it has come to the attention of everybody in the society. It will also likely traumatize them going forward.
Psychosocial support is one of it's the key, it's integral for any survivor of sexual and gender-based violence, and more so for minors, because you cannot even bring a minor who has been violated to court to testify or to give them, to testify in that case when you've not offered the psychosocial support because they are still traumatized. So number one, the psychosocial support should start the moment they visit a healthcare facility, a hospital. They should be allowed to see a counselor or a psychosocial expert who will take them through what they have gone who will guide them or just have a conversation with them on what they've gone through. And the sessions for psychosocial support, they ought not to be one, they ought to be a couple. And a counselor is in a position to evaluate how many sessions does a survivor of sexual violence need to get to a point where they've gotten some sort of healing, because some heal, others, some will take 1 year, 2 years to sort of get over that occurrence, but others may take 5 or 6 years. It depends on numerous circumstances. Additionally, when going to court, getting support system, when they are giving their testament in court, they need to be accorded the necessary support. Maybe someone, a counselor, could accompany them to court. And I've seen many judges and magistrates having hearing cases of minors in chambers, and that gives them some sort of comfort, not in the public spaces. So that gives them some sort of comfort. And the counselor who is seeing this minor ought to document and record the sessions and what are the key issues that these survivors of sexual violence has gone through, and whether they need additional sessions, whether they need additional support or medical care. So this support is continuous, depending on every case. It's a case-by-case basis.
There's something that keeps niggling at the back of my mind. The discussion always seems to be around lowering the age of consent. Is there discussion about raising the age of consent? And since it isn't discussed, is there something adverse or is there something against the thinking of raising it? Because we talk about 18. What if we said 21?
I personally haven't had conversations around raising the age of consent at this point. More debate and deliberations have been around lowering the age of consent to 16, perhaps. Those are some of the conversations that have been going on. The reason why perhaps there hasn't been any conversation around raising the age is because our laws prescribe 18 as the age of majority. That's when most people get more privileges and freedoms to vote, get a driving license, among other things. That's one of the things that has informed the discussions around lowering the age of consent.
You know, I understand that this particular topic is actually a complex one. And I don't think with time it's actually going to get less complex, especially in this information age where information is actually available at the tip of your fingers, literally. It won't get easy. But how then do we use this same technology that makes information so available? How do we make it an ally in ensuring that we reach this goal that is intended with these sort of discussions?
Flipping it, the same way we have messages that do not underscore issues around comprehensive sexuality education, we can use the same avenue to inform the adolescents who are, I believe, a majority of the consumers of the social media platforms or other online platforms, to educate them on sexuality, comprehensive sexuality education, what the laws provide for, because most of them are not even aware of what the laws provide or what the definition of defilement and what is Sexual Offences Act and what the impact of engaging in sexual relations with, whether between two minors or whether it's one adult and one is a minor. So using the same avenues, but in a more positive way. But secondly, to say issues around gender-based violence, they're not only a legal issue, it's a social legal issue. That's why community awareness, changing the social norms, takes a very long period of time. But we have to address them or try and cure this problem by approaching it not only from a legal perspective, but also from a social perspective. Ensuring conversations at the lowest form, whether it's in barazas, community forums, so that we don't leave the huge mandate to the teachers who are already overburdened by but they're trying to cover other topics or subjects in their curriculum. So a social legal approach is best suited to ensure that there's enough information, access to information in as far as the Sexual Offences Act is concerned and all other issues pertaining to the Act.
Let's open the phone line so we can get a couple of comments on this. 0719-012-600. We're having a conversation with Naitore Nyamu. She is the head of Physicians for Human Rights Kenya. We are talking about the Sexual Offences Act and all the facets of the Sexual Offences Act, and also sexual violence as a whole and how we can address it in the society. 0719-012-600. I want to come back to the issue of the support that a victim of sexual offense should get at that initial stage. It has just happened. They are going through everything they are going through. And then you said initially that, within 72 hours, they should go to a health facility. Within those 72 hours, again, they should also be going to a police station to report. They should be seeking justice. They should be thinking about how to, you're just thinking, how do I cleanse myself from this and start forgetting? But what kind of support should they be receiving at this particular point, and to make their access to justice, their pursuit of justice, much easier? And that's a question I'm asking you, Naitori. I mean, what kind of support should they be getting?
Sorry, for a moment I thought we were going on. We are waiting for a call to get in. Yes. So what is very critical, Eric, in terms of support for survivors of sexual violence is going to the healthcare facility within 72 hours. Personally, I believe that's the most integral part. Reporting to the police, you can do it much later when you're in that mind frame of to report. What's very essential is the collection of the evidence within the 72 hours and just making sure. Number one, what happens when you go to a healthcare facility within those 72 hours, you'll get a requisite medical attention, and also for girls or for women, you'll get a medication that might prevent a pregnancy. That's administered right away when you present yourself to the hospital and you indicate what you've gone through. You also get medical attention or a medicine to prevent any transmission of HIV and AIDS virus or any sexually transmitted disease. So you get that very critical attention within those 72 hours, and they are very, very essential. However, more often than not, that does not happen because of lack of information, but also accessibility of healthcare facilities or hospitals. And that now leads to other numerous complications. We've had cases whereby minors have been repeatedly violated, where they've been gang raped, or where numerous people have just defiled them over and over again. And we get women getting fistula. We get instances where minors have had to undergo intense operations that will have lifelong implications on their lives. So the guidance or the advice that we always give is try as much as possible to get to the hospital within 72 hours, because even that, at that point, you'll also get referred to a counselor, someone who can speak to you. But also critically is this medical care that avoids pregnancy, or that can prevent a pregnancy, or also the medication that prevents contradicting STDs.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so I mean, you're looking at, as you're talking about this, I mean, I think it weighs heavy then on the advocacy then that is necessary or that's required to get a lot of these things rolling. Another aspect of some of the things that we see, just as you mentioned, that there minors who are defiled repeatedly. They're those who then have to get constructive surgery to basically fix what repeated abuse has destroyed. But on the same time, when it comes to prosecution or looking at legal recourse for some of these victims, a lot of the times families get involved and don't want to take any kind of action because of tokens that may have been handed out to them. Looking at it from a legal point of view, what can be done to protect these victims? Because in as much as, nothing is done to the perpetrators, they then have to live a life, for the rest of their lives with that abuse hanging on their shoulders. Meanwhile, their parents have made a decision not to prosecute. What happens or what can happen to protect them? Because there are numerous examples of those.
Kangaroo courts or out-of-court settlement has become the norm in certain instances when it comes to cases of sexual and gender-based violence. I would like to highlight that defilement is a criminal offense, meaning it's a crime against the state, crime against the republic. Therefore, this is not a case that ought, by all means, to be solved outside the court, or to be taken through a couple of elders or parents agreeing that because our daughter has been defiled, let's give you 20,000 shillings or 10, whatever amount of money. That shouldn't happen at all. In fact, it's an illegality, the fact that such things are happening. But are they happening? Yes, of course. Left, right, and center. They do happen. And what's even more outrageous is the fact that when these conversations are happening, their survivors, in this case, is not part of those conversations. Yeah, so it's people who sit down and decide what to be done, disregarding the violation that this survivor has gone through. One of the things that we really need to emphasize in our community is that defilement is a criminal case. We hardly hear whereby in cases of murder, people come together to try and resolve that.
Right.
Why are we doing this for defilement? It's because one, we do not deem defilement as a heinous crime as a society or as a community. We think it's something that has happened in Mambo ya Nyumbani, and someone said when we were starting this conversation. Those are family issues, which is not necessarily the case. The other thing that I want to mention is that a number of cases of defilement, the perpetrators are family members. It's a relative, someone you live in close proximity to. And this now leads to a lot of tampering of evidence, tampering with the witnesses when these matters come to prosecution. The other support that minors require are safe spaces, shelters, where they can be, as the matter is proceeding in trial, they're in a space whereby they are protected, they have a good frame of mind where there's no interference with those witnesses. But when you have to attend court trial today and you have to go back in the same home where you're living with the perpetrator, then access to justice just becomes a mirage because it cannot happen. There'll be a lot of intimidation, there's going to be a lot of influence, and more often than not, in those instances, you see that survivor, the next time there's a mention or a hearing in court or when they are needed in court, they will not appear in court. Yeah.
Nyeri, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us today. Thank you for all your contributions and the insights, and we hope to be speaking with you again in a couple of days' time as we continue this conversation, seeing how then this discussion and this debate moves from this point to the next level of either going back to Parliament so that it's the amendments, the necessary amendments are made. But before then, to the best of your understanding, what are the steps that have been taken? We understand former Chief Justice David Maraga had formed a team. The Attorney General has formed a team. What's happening in this space?
Yes, that's as much information that I know in as far as the amendment is concerned. I haven't seen a comprehensive bill that should be tabled to Parliament. Haven't seen one, but I know there are conversations with the AG at the moment in terms of amendments. I think early this year, the National Gender and Equality Commission also launched a paper on why the age of consent should not be lowered. So there are ongoing conversations and research around, around the issue. I think in the next year also we might be seeing a bill being tabled in Parliament after the consultations that are currently ongoing.
Asante sana, then have a lovely day.
Thank you, Nyeri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This conversation continues, and we'll be waiting to see, what is it that comes out of all the conversations within the various offices. We have Senator Sylvia Kasanga on the line. She wants to contribute to this. Senator, good morning. Sorry, I had you on the wrong line. Good morning now, once again.
Okay, good morning, Latif, Siti, and Duko. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. As usual, you always have great conversations. I thought I'd just give a bit of my experience around this topic. In Parliament, we have a forum of Parliament for the Great Lakes region that canvasses about 11 countries in the larger East African region, including Congo and the Central African Republic, where parliamentarians look out for each other, best practices, and kind of share that, and then require that their parliaments can pass these to their executive governments to be able to implement. And one of the committees where I sit and serve is on women, children, and vulnerable persons. And this question of the vulnerability towards children and sexual violence and gender-based violence as well has been a really large topic, as you can imagine, especially in the war-torn countries. And so they always look out for what are other countries doing to, cushion their vulnerable members, and especially towards access to justice and psychosocial support. So one of our best experiences was what Kigali, Rwanda has done. And Rwanda has integrated in some of their, higher level hospitals a facility which is meant to rescue children and women or any victims of gender-based violence or sexual violence. And what they have done is that they have set up this facility alongside the hospital that then puts together a legal person, a collection of evidence center, including testing of DNA. They have psychosocial intervention within that center. And then beyond that, they give reintegration services. So once somebody has been treated, evidence has been taken, and they have been given some psychosocial support, going back home is also a service that they offer. And they also do outreach just to check that that person has reintegrated properly and that the family setup is prepared for that level of integration. So a bit of like extension of psychosocial support to the family as well. Over and above that, they have a hotline where in case anyone has any distress, they can call and they can be rescued. And then for victims who can't really go back home immediately, then they have these safe houses where they can be kept as they go through psychosocial support. And you can see that sort of a thing is a wonderful intervention. And especially for access to justice, because then they can gather all the evidence at that point in time, and there's a lawyer, in fact, present when that whole process is happening. And that has gone a long way to curbing these issues in Kigali. So what happens is then we bring that best practice, of course, in form of a report that is then adopted in Parliament. So I can tell you without a doubt, this is a conversation that has happened at Parliament, and is a question of, I think, some level of execution that then is required. Then, again, as part of my experience on this, it came to my attention through an organization called the Legal Resources Foundation about access to P3 forms. As you know, P3 forms are a very critical beginning of access to justice for any victims of any kind, but especially now in this particular topic. But it has come to my attention that a lot of police stations, will charge for access of the P3 form because it's been printed, they don't have them readily available, and they will charge maybe a 50 bob or 100 bob, depending, and it's different for different stations. So this foundation actually went to court in Embo and extracted an order from the court that it was illegal for P3 forms to be charged. And, that sort of a thing has not yet been effected, and that's how it was brought to my attention. What can we do about it? I actually raised a statement in the floor of the House to say that P3 forms must be free. That way you don't deter, victims from seeking justice. But over and above that, the P3 form also needed to be expanded in scope of how collection of evidence is done. And maybe it's time now, a country like ours, surely DNA should be available at various stations around the country, and, results availed also quickly so that then the victims can get some form of justice and reprieve, because that's part of their healing. So these are questions that actually are happening at the level, and I thought I'd just share as something that we are doing about it, although it's still very little, but a lot more definitely needs to be done.
That's very
true. I thought
I'd
share with you.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Asante sana, Senator, and have a lovely day.
Asante. Okay.
At 4 minutes after 9, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at traffic, and then we switch over conversations. Come back to It's Friday. We still have a curfew in place. It's in effect until the 29th of May, 8 p.m. to what time again? 4 a.m.
4.
Now, the issue of the 8 p.m. curfew is one that is raising a lot of conversations, especially if you look at now that it's raining. Are people, even those that are really trying and willing to comply with the law, able to comply with the law, how can they be facilitated so that they can comply with the law? And at the same time, bearing in mind that the purpose of the law is to curb the spread of COVID-19. 5 minutes after 9, let's take a look at traffic, and then the conversation continues.
All right, sun's taking a break. Well, actually, the rain's taking a break for a short time in Nairobi this morning. Traffic opening up on Mombasa Road, heading out into the city. And we're looking at other parts as well. Coming off of Jogo Road is where we saw some heavy traffic today, coming from industrial area, getting into the city via Landis. We'll keep an eye on that one, but it doesn't look too crazy, at least not for now. Coming off Thigger Road as well is looking good. And in Westlands, into the city and outbound as well. Slowed down a little bit, but it's picking up slowly. Keep an eye on things, guys, and let us know if you get stuck somewhere. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's the final hour of the show this week. Nduoko, are you happy?
Am I happy?
Yes.
That
No, are you happy?
Sure.
If you're happy and you know, clap your hands.
No.
Mr. City Muga, sir.
Yes.
I do not want to break my neck, so I give you all due respect.
That is actually good thinking.
You know,
on
I'm a
your
young
part.
man.
You know, we're never going to hear the end of this, eh?
No. Not only we do not hear the end, because it is a justice of our court
That
who
has
said
said so.
he has legalized it now.
absolutely.
He's legally young.
So, birth certificate, passport, ID.
This has all
out the
come
window.
from a judge of a competent jurisdiction.
Yes.
In this republic.
In fact, the statement was, you must be a very young man.
Yes.
And that's the take-home message. Okay, very young man, let me just read the proverb. All right? If you overtake a leader, you break your neck.
If you overtake a leader, you break your neck.
Certainty, not you might break your neck. There's a possibility of your neck breaking. You break your neck. Consequence.
Okay, so let's talk about this curfew story. All right? Proper enforcement, especially in Nairobi, started happening on Saturday when police erected roadblocks on various highways, and they said those who were flouting the curfew rules, who were not indoors by 8 p.m., were caught up. And this brought in a lot of issues. Okay, so why is this happening? Was it proper enforcement of the law? There are those who came out to say, well, we wanted to observe the curfew rules, but we were unable to because of one reason or the other. The traffic situation, the job situation, what we were involved in by the time that you leave work and then you get into a matatu. By the time you board up a matatu, it gets into traffic. What time do you get home? Big conversations. And the government came out through the regional coordinator, the office of the regional commissioner. And the regional commissioner said, yeah, we hear this. But what we've also observed is that observance to this has fallen below 50%. So we needed to take action. And we are going to make sure that we are humane about it. But the fact of the matter is that people are not observing. Now, this week, there's been a lot of conversation around this. We've seen even our journalists at the Standard Media Group going out and on a fact-finding mission. So, many people are caught up at bus stages, waiting for transport home. It's not that there's a shortage of matatus. Matatus are not on strike. Matatus are operating. But because of traffic, the number of matatus that are caught up in traffic and therefore not doing the trips back and forth are many. So you find many people who are now caught up in the bus stops. They don't have matatu. By the time you board your matatu, it gets into the same gridlock of traffic. By the time you get home, you are 3 hours on the road, and you completely flouted the law. Is this the sense? Let's hear from some of the residents of Nairobi City County who were interviewed by Standard Group.
Kwa majina naitwa Lamita Latima. Okay, unajua mbona nimekaa hapa hivi? Unajua ukifika mapema kama mimi natoka Kibra, na Kibra hapo awali tulikuwa tunaenda na 30. But sasa ukifika kituka saa moja unachajiwa 80. Sasa unapata wengi wetu si ni masla. Unapata unafanya kazi per day unapewa 300. Sasa una imagine ukienda na 80 kukuja inakuwa expensive. So at least nitoke hapa late ndo nipande at least hata na 30 ndo ni save pesa. Hii kafi imetutesa sana. Sasa unapata bei ni transport inakuwa juu, na sasa mapolisi pia wanateka advantage. Tunagongwa, hata juzi niligongwa hapa kwa magoti, nasikia uchungu, na sasa unapata hata pesa kwenda OC ni shida sana. Kuja kazi nateseka, mzee huku pia ukimwambia unaumia hana haja na wewe. Sasa mimi nazaambia tu press at least alegeze masla ka sisi, unajua tu atoshani.
All right. Kibra resident. Fare moves up from 30 bob to 80 bob this peak time because, of course, of the operators taking advantage of the rising demand. Now, we can talk about the operators and what they're doing, but also the fact that there is such rising demand is indicative of something. It's indicative of the fact that everybody is at the same time rushing to go home to beat the curfew. And then it's indicative that the matatus are not able to ferry and come back in good time because traffic, because construction of the roads, because all those factors. So when Ms. Latema is waiting for the matatu and many others, and it starts raining, they start crowding. So that whole justification for having a curfew in the first place
thrown out the window.
Sort of thrown out the window, because now you are talking about people now struggling and being together, and social distancing, 0. So now
beats the purpose, because I think you need to look at it. It beats the entire purpose of getting people out of the streets and at home so that you can break the chain. Because it's just interesting to me that with all the discourse and the conversations back and forth, we seem to have forgotten that the initial reason why this curfew was put in place was to be able to break the chain of COVID and to stop the disease from spreading, right? Now, all these things that have been put into place, you still have people then at bus stops for hours waiting for a matatu to pick them up, for a bus to come along the route. You have hundreds of people, thousands of people waiting, same place. It doesn't make a difference. So the cry has been 2 things. 1, remove this curfew altogether, or move it ahead a couple of hours and let us at least try and get home by 10 o'clock.
Facilitate us to get home.
Facilitate us to get home. And one of the ways you could facilitate is by extending the hours. Is to say, okay, go until 10 o'clock and let people have ample time to be able to get off of their daily beat and then get home. Because it is, look, let's just be honest, it is not working. For the majority of the people who have to use public transport, being home by 8 o'clock is not happening. It's not working. And I know that we would have some stragglers who, you know, even if you put it at 10 o'clock, they'll say, okay, now it's moved to 10 o'clock, let's do whatever. But for the majority of people, it seems that it's not working. And the reasons why I'm looking at it, it's that not that they don't want to be, but that they can't afford to be. Number one, they can't afford to be because the fares have risen. In some places, 50 shillings, in some places, 100 shillings. They used to pay 50 shillings, you're now paying 150 off of the same wage that you're earning on a daily basis. And then walking is out of the question because there's no way that you'll be able to walk and get home by 8 o'clock. It's not happening. So would it be considered, the suggestion then would be extend the hours because it's not working by 8 o'clock. And that is a fact. It's not emotion. It's not, are we trying to be defiant or irresponsible?
It's not impunity.
It's not. People can't get home.
Actually, you see, the matatu owners and the matatu business persons know that time constraint is what gives them the freedom to charge what they want. The inconvenience caused by that time is to their benefit.
Yes.
By simply extending the time, you will remove that stranglehold. Because I will know I do not have to be at that bus stop, bus station at 6 o'clock. Yes. No, I can be there at 7, I can be there at 8.
So then you remove that thing of people saying, I can't afford it. You can go back there and then you remove the justification for raising the fare because these people have to be there by a certain period of time. Let's raise the fare because they have no choice but to take it. Those who would argue against it would say, well, I can't afford it. So then I'm going to stay here because what am I going to do?
But to be
so you extend the hour, then you remove the justification for increasing the fare, and then you remove that issue of cost that people are complaining about. I can't afford the fare at that time.
Yep.
You remove all those things. So there should be no excuse for then people to get on home.
To be fair to the Matatu business persons, they also understand that they are limited in the number of trips they can make.
Yeah.
So they are going to capitalize on this one trip, knowing very well that to go and come back may be an impossibility.
Yep. I think the issue here is because everybody is on the road at the same time,
yes,
it means there's a gridlock.
There is a gridlock.
When you're spending 3 hours on the road, previously, before the curfew, that Matatu could have done 2 trips. And now the Matatu is basically looking at going from CBD to Rongai once. And it closes because that's the end of the day. They cannot come back. Curfew is in effect. Even they are not allowed to be operating because who are you going to carry? So they also are operating with that mindset. But if you hear now the suffering is transfer, the Matatu guy is looking, I need to make 8,000 shillings at the end of the day. So
that's the arithmetic.
That's it. If I raise the fare, as long as I get my 8,000 bob,
it's okay.
The problem is now you, the commuter, who has to finance that. Somebody says that they paid a journey that costs 100 to 150 bob between CBD to Rongai. They're now paying 300. That's double. You hear this lady who's saying she normally pays 30 bob from CBD to Kibra. It has moved more than double to 80 bob. Now, seriously, there's a lot of suffering. And it's the same person that you're thinking, she says, if I'm paid 200 bob a day, I have to balance that into how much am I going to be able to feed my family, meet my obligations in terms of rent, have transport, be able to even look at saving some amount of money. And this goes up. It disorganizes everything in my budget. It disorganizes everything in my life. When fare goes up by 50 bob, it eats into everything else that I have. So these are legitimate concerns that are being raised by people. And the question then is, the government that is in effect, is in place, and you're monitoring all these things, and you can see clearly this is what's happening. Can you have conversations about, so what do we do about the curfew time?
I think it would be foolhardy.
Can you even have a conversation? You don't have to say. Can you have a conversation of how it can be staggered, and say Matatus alone are allowed to operate beyond a certain time? So you look at how you can reduce the traffic on the road.
Look, I think I've just heard things from Sunday until today, and I get the general feeling that generally people want to comply. I think there's a number of people who just don't care. But generally people want to comply. But at the same time, there's a necessity of livelihood, whereby you need to eat. And in order to do that, then you need to work and then get paid. You need to do something. So those people, because the minority of people are driving to work. Minority of people are working from home. The majority of people have to be out there and break a sweat to be able to earn a living. Okay? That's the reality. So that means they need to be out. Now, if we want to enforce measures, if we want to say that a curfew is in place, we want to stop some kind of movement. At the same time, you want to protect your people from getting this COVID-19. The only thing that makes sense to me now, right now, is to extend the hours. Give people a little bit more time to be able to get home. It won't work. It won't work. If we had seen by Tuesday or Wednesday, for example, that, we've seen the streets are empty by 8 o'clock, then you say, it's possible for people to hustle and get home. But it has not worked. If you want to give Thika Road as the example, people are even making fun of it now and saying, well, if you need a place to sleep, go park on the side of the road on Thika Road, and there's a security for you because the cops are there making sure that you don't go.
And you'll have company.
It's not working. So let's be, I think it's beyond the conversation. Something needs to be done. Otherwise, you're going to have a frustrated folk sleeping on the streets. They can't make it home, not because they don't want to, just because they are actually unable.
Let's take a break, take a look at the weather, all right? And when we come back, we want to pick your calls. There are those that are calling for the extension of curfew hours beyond 8 p.m. Some saying take it even to 11 p.m. It's fine. Do you support those calls for the extension of curfew hours beyond? Okay, so is it extension of curfew hours, extension of curfew start time, reduction of curfew hours from 11, moving from 8 p.m. to
10.
any other time, 10, 11, midnight, remove it all together? What do you think? Let's hear from a resident of Kiserian and then take a look at the weather.
Naitwa Isaya Masinde na naishi Kiserian. Hizi ni toka 20 kufika saa 2 na mimi naomba sana kwa sababu sasa saa hizi magari jamu imeshikana. Nilikuja hapa mapema lakini hakuna magari, zimeshikana jamu, alafu bei yao iko juu. Sasa nashindwa, ile pesa uko nayo ni kidogo. So lazima tena ukae kidogo ngoje at least pay ishuka chini. Naomba rais wetu Uhuru Kenyatta, tunampenda na tulimpikia kura vizuri. Tunaomba at least arekeze sheria ya curfew at least ikuja saa 4. Kwa sababu sasa saa hizi nikitoka hapa nitafika Kiserian saa 3:30. Na sasa itakuwa imefunga barabara. Sasa sijui ndalala nje ama nitafanya namna gani. Ndalala kwa barabara leo.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, the sun is coming out in some parts of the city. We'll see lows of 16 today and highs of 25. That's Nairobi. Nyeri at 17. Light rain, highs of 24 and lows of 15. It's cloudy in Nakuru at 19, going to highs of 25 and lows of 15. 14 the low in Eldoret, 19 at the moment, going to highs of 24. We will see highs of 28 in Kisumu today. It's mostly sunny at 23 and cloudy in Kakamega at 22. 25 the high and lows of 16. Light rain in Mombasa still 32 the high, coming down to lows of 26. And it's also raining in Malindi at 28, highs of 31. Light rain in Kampala, 25 the high, lows of 19. And it's partly sunny still in Dar es Salaam. Expecting rain later with highs of 31 and lows of 25. Johannesburg is sunny at 13, highs of 20 and lows of 9. There's a haze over the Lagos skies at 26, 32 the high and coming back down to lows of 26. Thunderstorms, heavy ones in Kinshasa at 24, highs of 32, 21 and sunny in Beijing, highs of 22. It's sunny in Paris at 6, it'll go to highs of 19. 15 will be the high in London where it's sunny right now at 5. Coming into Friday morning, New York is clear at 6. We'll see highs of 18.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
0719-012-600. Should the curfew hours be moved back to 10 p.m.? And this is because of the effect that very many people are affected by the 8 p.m. time. Everybody on the road at the same time, traffic and not enough matatus and matatu fares going up, and people still end up getting home late. That gentleman who said he was still in town waiting for a matatu at 20 minutes to 8 p.m. in CBD and is going to Kiserian.
Consider for a
Kiserian.
second. Consider, you see, Ndu talked about compliance. Those long queues, if you wanted evidence of compliance, that's it. If you want to understand that people are willing to comply, the gridlock, okay, you will talk about people leaving at the same time. The truth is, it isn't just a question of living at the same time. These efforts to create development plays a really big role in these bottlenecks we keep speaking of. If you're going to Thika Road and you're coming from the CBD of Nairobi, it will take you 2 hours.
And a lot of creativity.
It doesn't matter what you do. 2 hours to probably get to Muthaiga. 2 hours. To understand it, on a normal day, driving at a normal speed of below 100 kilometers an hour, it will take you an hour to get to Naivasha. Okay? This one, you're talking about Muthaiga.
Within the city.
Yes, because there are many things that could be done to ease this discomfort. And they are within the purview of the government if they so wish to do so.
So it's all something that the government can do.
Yes, they can do. And this one doesn't require talking to the IMF.
No. This is just people doing their work on a regular basis. Ed Getonga in Nyeri, hi.
Morning, guys. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Nice. Now, here's the thing, huh? It's It's not rocket science that curfew is already inconveniencing people. It's not rocket science. And actually, I was very, very, very pessimistic when I heard of 8 p.m. I was like, no, it's not going to work. Because there was a time when I was in Nairobi, and I used to live at Thika. And coming from Nairobi to Thika, it was actually taking an hour plus. Mind you, that time curfew was 10. I was taking Kenya Mpya and taking Kenya Mpya from town, pale fire station, up to Muthaiga. Actually, it's going to take you a whole hour.
Yep.
Mind you, haujafika kule unaenda. And actually, to be quite honest, even the current hours that we have, 8, that means someone is going to have to get out of work at 3 or 4. If it's someone who is operating his own or her own business, that means that there's some hours of production that are not going to be there. It doesn't make sense. The 8 p.m. curfew, it doesn't make sense, and it can't work. It can work in other towns, but not Nairobi.
That's true. So
the poor management in Nairobi as far as traffic is concerned, not Nairobi.
So Ed, should then the curfew be moved back to 10 p.m.?
I think it should be moved to 10 p.m., yes.
Okay.
Ed, you are in this industry that we refer to as the matatu industry.
Yes.
If the time was moved to 10 p.m. as we are suggesting,
yes,
what would you then see with the transportation? What would you then see with the cost of transportation that people are complaining about in Nairobi?
Okay, first of all, I'm going to go to the line of cost of transportation because some people don't get it why at fares hike. First of all, there is a simple law of demand versus supply. And without adding that, sometimes I may be having a vehicle at Thika and najua kuna flow Nairobi. Itakuja teke from Thika without carrying anyone. So that nifika Nairobi on time na nibebe watu. So because of that cost ya kutoka Thika kwenda Nairobi teke bila kubeba anyone, I will have to double charge. There's also something else, Bwana City. I think somehow the government has to be objective on this. And you have to look at things in an open-minded way. For example, there was the flare-up on Saturday. And I can tell you this, Bwana City, most vehicles that were in the flare-up were private vehicles. And if you use simple mathematics, if a bus carries 33 people, and those 33 people had vehicles, if those 33 people left their vehicles at home and used one bus, those are 32 vehicles lost on the road. Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
If only the people, and not just the government, if only people will use that analogy, it's not a must you drive your car to work and back without stress. Chukua matatu in your own time, go to work with that matatu, you will ease congestion. It works. It has worked in other modern cities. New York has worked. It has worked in other cities.
Now you've gotten to the heart of the matter, Ed.
Right.
But so, look at the concept of what we call public transport. Since this is an industry you're familiar with, is it possible for this industry to actually bring, forget these small 14 people carrier vehicles, all right? Is it possible for this industry to think about enlarging the vehicles that they now use, since after all you're SACCOs anyway? Is it possible for you to do that?
It is.
And why haven't you thought about it? Because part of the reason why many people do not like using what we call the 14-seaters, my friend, you get cramped into that vehicle to the point where when you actually reach your destination, you stop being a human being.
Okay. Bonacity, I would like to tell you this. Yes, you get cramped if it's a long distance. And it is within your own right. Kama gari imejaa, it is within your own right not to get into a car that is already full. Because I can tell you,
Ed, when you get in, it's not full. It is. And then by the time you're realizing that they've packed everybody, you can't even move from where you're sitting.
It means that there's somebody who's getting in when it's full.
Yes, exactly, Eric. Thank you for because you know why they do that, Eric. Let me tell you something. Some people are like, hey, badala ya kulala sela ama kutwangwa na hao watu,
wacha niingie niende.
Wacha niingie nifike nyumbani mapema.
Yep.
Yes. I think in a way we need to revolutionize the public matatu industry versus using private cars. If we can decongest the city, even if the curfew was at 6,
people would still be able to move. In Paris, the curfew is at 7 and people are going home.
Yes.
Even if it is 7.
But they have public transportation, which is reliable.
That's it. Ed, thank you very much. Let's hear from Anthony in Mombasa. Good morning.
Good morning, station room.
Good morning.
Morning.
How is Nairobi?
Cold.
Mombasa is sunny as usual.
How are the traffic jams in Mombasa, Anthony?
The traffic jams are manageable in Mombasa. Not very much. The only sections that are usually affected are the ones under construction. Otherwise, all other routes, they've been able to manage traffic, and people are always able to transverse home and work properly. The only problem with Mombasa is it's an island. We only have 3 exits, 2 for vehicles, 1 for the ferry. So all vehicles tend to converge at the Nyeri Bridge and the Makupa Causeway. But considering that the Makupa Causeway A109 road is under construction as a dual carriage, things have really changed now. For the Nyeri Bridge, they came up with some solution. The county government, there's what they call the happy hour. They're able to control the traffic that way. Now, coming to today's discussion, I would like to address these people who always ask these questions on why people can't be home on time. There's something that is called privilege. And I'll say that privilege is recognizing that 3 people could say, I didn't eat today. And it could mean 3 different things. One person could be he's unable to afford a meal. Person 2 is dieting to lose some weight. And person 3 is upset and he doesn't have an appetite, but they have enough food in the fridge. Those are 3 people who have said, I didn't eat today. Only one of these people is not speaking from privilege. So when multifaceted thinking like this is adopted, you'll find that the narrative such as, why can't people just get home on time? We have the same hours, blah, blah, such things, they'll become redundant. And some people speak from the point of privilege, of which privilege is not bad. But perpetually reasoning through that one lens is what brings the whole issue.
I think it's also an unfair branding of people for raising a conversation and raising their point of view. That, just because somebody has spoken because they were at home, then they are privileged because they are... Come on. There are people who got home... hold on. There are people... This is about observance of curfew. There's privilege of eating and not eating. There are the people who are raising the issue of why are people not at home. There are people who are saying that because they are home, yes, because they made an effort to get home on time.
You know why?
And they're speaking out of their own experience of making the effort. And they also understand that there's somebody else who could have done exactly what I have done, made an effort to get home, and they didn't. And they also are fully cognizant that there are people who have, despite their best efforts to get home, they haven't gotten home. Now, the point is, Those who were making the best effort to get home did not get home because the roads were fully occupied by people who could have gotten home and they did not get home.
But some of these people, you never know where a person comes from. Everybody has his own story. There are people who hustle from morning to evening. All their hustling hours are for the evening. And unless they do that, they cannot afford a meal. So come vote me. In fact, what I say is, this curfew should not even be there. Because...
Oh, we've lost John. We've lost him. We've lost Anthony. Well, we get the point, though. We get the point, and it's a very valid point as well. Let's take a break. Let's take a look at traffic and what's happening on the roads at this time. As we hear that, we hear from more people who got caught up in traffic last evening and were being interviewed by standard journalists on the road.
Jina langu ni Daniel Yosiemo. Wacha nikuambie, sisi wananchi wadogo huwa tunaumianga sana. Na mimi huambiaga watu wananchi wadogo wanachesewa akili. Tuseme sasa kama curfew. Unapata kama tuseme hata kama ndani angalia champare restaurant vile imekaa. Niambie huyo mtu atatoka hapo saa ngapi? Nikitoka hapa nikienda Mombasa road. Napata barabara imefunga. Kufika kwa nyumba nitapata nimefika saa 3 ama saa 3:30. Nikifika hapo ni kwa stage. Nikifika kwa stage ndio hiyo mbio mpaka kwa nyumba. Na nakaa kama kilomita 1 kutoka kwa barabara. Kwa sababu niko mdogo singetokea kasi mapema. Juu ni lazima nitafute riziki yangu ya kila siku. Na hata kama ilifungwa, mimi naitwanga usiku sako. Nilitoka, mimi ni mtu alifungiwa usiku sako. Ningeomba rais atafute wale wasauri wanamsauri, atafute usauri mwingine. Ama mimi mwenyewe ni sauri hivi. Mimi mwenyewe ni sauri hivi. Yeye atafute aseme kila mtu apoe na sanitizer kwa mfuko. Ama kila duka, ama kila mahali kuna service yote ya public wawe na maji nje.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Creativity makes the world go round. Today and even throughout history, we continue to solve the problems around us through a creative process. Everything around us is a product of creative minds, thinking differently and thinking outside the box. This year, as we explore the creative economy as an opportunity, we invite you to listen in as we engage a group of young and exceptional creative thinkers who are turning their craft into paid opportunities. Join us live on our Standard Digital website and Facebook page on 23rd of April from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come ready to listen and learn on ways you can leverage the year of a creative economy. It's time to answer questions that are worthwhile. The Big Quiz Show is here. Register to play from the comfort of your home by SMSing the word JOIN to 23774. Then watch the live show on KTN every Sunday from 8 p.m. where you could have a chance to win a melee. The fastest and most accurate answers are guaranteed to win. The Big Quiz Show, Sundays at 8 p.m. only on KTN.
Okay, so looking much better, guys, in these streets. Mombasa Road. Outbound now, still some traffic, but nothing too terrible. Coming into the city, it looks a little bit better also from Thika Road and from Jogger Road as well. So I think it's going to settle down, at least for now. Probably going to pick up in the afternoon, and then towards the evening it'll pick up quite some. But for now, officially out of traffic hour, and the morning madness seems to be over. Just in case anything does pop out at you, let us know. SpiceFMKE on Twitter, text on 40127.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
012 coffee hours from 8 to 4 a.m. Should this be adjusted and the time taken back to 10 p.m.? Because clearly 8 is affecting very many people. John in Elbagon, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
John. Yeah, though I'm in Nairobi now, not in Elbagon.
Karibu katika mji mkuu wa taifa la Kenya.
Yes. Yeah, now this thing is complex, and you will not have easy answers to it. Because also there's the issue of we are dealing with a pandemic. There's the issue that we are dealing with also people who are, as that lady who spoke, the first lady who spoke, and I really felt her, the lady from Kibera. I really felt her, But I was just wondering, how come we were able to be compliant when the first time it was 7 a.m.? What is different now? Because remember the 7 a.m. it was compliant.
7 p.m. to 5, yeah.
7 p.m., yes. Remember it was actually like 100% compliant. So I'm just been asking myself, what is different now that we are not able to? I don't know. Maybe, but what is different?
The difference is a number of
7
things.
PM
I think a number of things, if you just think about it. Initially, last year, there was a lot of fear and uncertainty around what is happening now. What's this COVID, all right? So many people even willingly shut down their businesses and they were not even going to work at all. So we had people who would basically get up and spend their day indoors at home, not leaving, not going to work. Now, it's a bit different. Even the economy and all the restrictions that have been put in place, they're still allowing people to go about their business. So that's it. We have more people getting out of their homes on a daily basis now in this particular restrictions than we had last year.
And I think that people are less scared of even contracting COVID. Before it was, people had a certain fear that they could get sick. Not so much anymore.
But if you ask me, we should even be more scared now than then.
That's true.
Should.
Yeah, we should be more scared because now this thing is more prevalent. We are told it's more infectious. We are told it's more lethal. So we should be more scared than now. And that's why I'm saying it's a complex thing because there's an economic issue to it. There's the health issue to it. And it doesn't have a simple answer. It's not even the issue of saying push it to 10 p.m. It is and I will not say I have an answer to it, but I just say it is a complex matter which will not require a simple solution to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Justus in Kilifi, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Habari zenu?
Hatujambo kaka, hatujui wewe.
Niko sawa, nasikia drama za Nairobi tu.
Ndivyo.
Now, following up on the media, the caller who has just left, I also do confess I don't have answers, But let me give two analogies before I make the point I want to make. When you are young, in the village, my mother used to tell you, ukienda kwa jirani ukule. If you go to the neighbors and eat, you will see. You see?
Yeah.
And I think that's a common thing, especially if you live in a neighborhood where food, you have various food levels in each home, yeah?
Yeah.
And when you are younger, she never explained why. She simply told you, if I ever find you eating.
Yep.
And then later she will explain why. But if she caught you eating, she'll, of course, work on you nicely, yeah? And then after that, she'll give you a lot of food. The same food she found you eating there, she'll put it on your table with a cane beside and tell you to eat it because you went looking for it. You never went back again. You never did that. Now, if only our government could borrow that simple strategy my mother used to use. Tell people don't keep the curfew. If you break the curfew, I'll do this. But if you go for food, here is the food. Eat a lot of it. The second story I wanted to give is about transport. The transport system and commuter behavior. In Mombasa, in Mombasa, you get out of the island through very tiny bridges. The 3 bridges. What the transport system did, the county department of transport did. They created in the evening and in the morning what you call happy hour, where because they are monitoring this on screens in some office, they can see there is a blockage on a certain road, and then immediately the county marshals, the traffic marshals, will easily open an alternative which could even include blocking one lane, so that they can ease out the one side. Within 3-5 minutes, the whole area is done, and then the traffic is back to normal. Now, I wish even the Nairobi transport managers could also think innovatively. They may not copy exactly what Mombasa is doing, right? But they can think innovatively, because with the technology right now, you can be able to see the place where roadblocks are happening.
Yeah.
And then you create a diversion, hold one end a little bit, and then the other one opens so that you ease it out. Lastly, human behavior reacts to situations differently, but over time they find ways of adopting to it. The same way commuters, like the caller was saying, why at that time they were complying. Right now they cannot comply. It's because the situation has changed, and therefore the way guys respond to curfew, the way they respond to the need is also changing. What needs to happen is also a method of enforcing the curfew that is also responding to the needs the people have. For example, if the curfew compliance is a problem because everybody is coming to work in the city, there are cadres of work where people can leave work at 7 in the evening. There are others who can leave at 1, for example. There are others who can leave at 3. Why can the government and the local administrators work with all these different worker levels or work organizations and designate time, what can we call it? Times for certain types of workers, so that you can say your day begins at, let's say, 6, your day ends at noon. Go home. And they make arrangements with even the respective employers, so that you know, if I'm working in the hotel industry, by 7, this is the time my workers leave, so that we don't have everybody rushing to the bus station at the same time. As I said again, it's a complex, I agree with the previous caller, it's a complex situation, but we need to think outside the box. The rule, they do it, or utaniona, my mother's approach needs modification.
Just as you don't know just how right you are.
Yeah.
Because as you were talking, I was thinking of a situation that we used to experience with care and treatment for people who are HIV positive. You'd find, say, for instance, on Mondays, it's like people carry all the diseases they have for the weekend, and then on Monday they land on you.
On you.
So you have all these people who actually want treatment, and they overflow from the waiting area. Then you realized some people start lining up as early as 5.
Yes.
So a time came when it was decided, no, you know, folks, let's bring in some people here so that start working at 5:30.
Yeah.
And they work until probably 10 or 11.
You go home.
They go, a new group of people come in, and so no one waits from, say, 5 until 8 when you officially open. So you are attended to, and people who actually need to go to work can be attended to and actually go to work.
Yeah.
And those who come at a later time will also get attended to. Thank you for bringing that thing up.
Not everybody who is in town up to 7 actually needs to be in town up to 7. Up to 7, isn't it?
Yes.
So if we create that and we communicate that, and I like the way you guys keep on hinting at communication. My friends, COVID is going to be managed by effective communication. Mari imefika. Where it has reached. And that communication is not about communicating an order, a memo, no. Designing messages and directives that actually resonate with the way people behave, the way people arrange their days. You get it? Because you're not going to tell somebody to get out of town earlier if he needs food at home. He's not going to go home at 1 to find kids waiting for him hungry. He'll hang around in town. There are others who are in town but don't need to be in town the whole day. They can be at home. They can go to the nearest. They can, if it's Kibra, you can go around Ayan there, walk around there rather than coming to town to create a jam there.
That's very true. Very true. Just as, do you have a company, a registered company? You know, my friends in government are saying, tunaweza kukupatia ka consultancy kidogo, utengeneze hiyo mambo yote, then we see. We'll tell you how much to quote.
Just as you need to be careful. Eric wants you to be held before a parliamenary committee to answer questions.
We'll tell you how much to quote. You just put all those things in writing.
The angry Kenyan in me could be excited, but the father in me, there are some stories I don't want my kids to read about.
Have a lovely day, Justus.
A lovely day too. Thank you.
Asante sana.
Okay.
Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Let's hear from Zachary, who's been on the line for a while. Zachary, good morning.
Oh, good morning. It's good that you have told them that I've been on the line, on hold for long. And, you're allowed to compensate me. Now, I guess everyone, including our old Japoji, is okay.
Yes,
we are all well, thank you, Zachary. Thank you.
And you don't think that you have forgotten about the signpost. We are still waiting for it. Now, I always like by asking some questions. Yesterday, I thought over the clip that we were given by some quarter that emanated from some quarters, depicting about or talking about how guns are done, exchanged,
Yes.
I don't know whether you may allow one to, probably you have some whatever to comment about or for us to talk about how we viewed that thing, so you think about it, And coming now to the issue of the curfew and the COVID and whatever, I have listened to all the people who have talked, They are the wananchi kama like me, who are not the policy makers. But then I have not heard anyone talking about we as the people. Okay, this curfew is put so that it helps us, to control this disease. I have not heard somebody who is saying that I'm ready to compromise this so that I can be able to meet the government at this point, On the issue of at the CGU, there is a guy there who said that most of those cars or vehicles that were on road at that time, were private vehicles. May I tell him that today, having or owning your own vehicle, personal car, is not a luxury. It's a convenience, actually, because all of us have, including our old morning there, we have traveled in this matatu. There is no dignity in them, and therefore, for those of us who can afford to probably have a vehicle, means of transport, for comfort, for convenience, for even security, your security is much more assured when you are driving your own vehicle, We are going to opt for it, no matter what. Therefore, what I'm saying is this, and what I would want everyone to probably understand is this: we are at war. Just like I said yesterday, we are at war with an invisible enemy, and this enemy is ruthless. It doesn't know Eric, it doesn't know the newest billionaire in town. This enemy is vicious, and it is killing. So why can't we at least try? If I know that my business peaks at around 6, okay, I can say I know that is okay, and I get some extra coin. But then, due to the prevailing circumstances, let me sacrifice this and let me abide by what has been laid out, and it is not going to be for long, And this I'm sounding like a government apologist, but you don't. No. I'm listening.
You can be both, Zachary. You can be a reasonable citizen, and you can also be a government apologist.
No. I'm a reasonable citizen. I'm not an apologist to anyone, But then, even at my home, Mr. Eric, when you find that my finances are now this down, because probably our pay there could be pay cuts, you go and say, why is there? Okay, you know that we used to have sausages and eggs, and you used to have to go for saunas. Okay, now for this particular time, let us sacrifice, so that we can be able to avail the most necessary items,
so we can survive it.
Can I just quip on that, whatever that clip I was talking about? Can I quip? Can I state something? And please don't zero label me as a deep a government apologist. Let me say this, or tell everyone this, One, serious gun runners, okay? Don't arrange things on phone, Am I clear there? Serious gun runners will never at least tell you let us meet at something on phone. No, that is where I find that whatever somehow not convincing, fully convincing, Two, look at the characters the characters were involved in that clip, because I've looked at it. Look at their body language. Yeah, I do not want to say that it was something arranged. You call it stage managed. Yeah. But the characters that were used in that, whatever, the main actors,
they were questionable. The main actors,
they were questionable. They don't look like serious criminals. Yeah. So, when you got whatever, I'll talk more about it. Yeah.
Zachary, you go to the DCI. You seem to know a lot of information, and you understand how gun running as a business.
No.
You know how serious gun runners look like,
and how they communicate.
And how they should speak.
You need to assess the government
with investigations.
With investigations.
Thank you very much, Zachary.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.
You too. Have a lovely day. GenerationNextChallenge.com. GenerationNextChallenge.com. Have you registered your child there? So, if your child is within the ages from kindergarten to 11th grade, please log on to GenerationNextChallenge.com. Keep them busy during this holiday season. Let them acquire a deep understanding of math, computer science, robotics, sharpening their computational skills, and nurturing their creativity and creative abilities by connecting math to real life. Now, when they start early to understand how math connects to real life, they like math. If they don't, well, you shaurienu. Keep it right here. The conversation continues. Let's hear what this lady said as we pick the final call, 0719-012-600.
Mimi naitwa Wirikista Wechere. Natoka kazi. Nimetoka kazi, niko na mtoto wangu hapa. Venye maisha ni magumu na hii corona, natokanga kwa nyumba kitu kama saa 9 na kuja kazi. Kukuja kazi juu ya hii curfew, watu hata wanunui, hakuna pesa hii tao. Sasa inabidi nikuja na mtoto wangu ndio huyu, tukuja kufanya biashara. Hata saa hii sijapata kitu, nimerudi na box zangu ndio hizi.
Unauza nini?
Nauza crisps. Pesa sijapata, nyumba sijalipa juu ya hii curfew. Na wakati hakukuwa na hii curfew, nilikuwa napata pesa mapema, naenda kwa nyumba. Naomba tu president atuonee huruma, afungue, atuongezee labda masaa kidogo. Juu hii masaa naenda kwa nyumba, niko na watoto 4, hata kukura inakuwa 6. Sasa inabidi nitoe mtoto asome, na mwambia kuja twende kutafuta na wewe, labda ndio tutaweza pata kitu ya kukula. Sasa ona nimerudi na kazi juu ile masaa, unaona hii masaa ya usiku nilikuwa nauza. Sasa una break ukimbilie gari uende kwa nyuma na hujapata ile kitu napata yenye nilikuwa napata. Sasa hiyo sita tuko nayo, tunaomba president tafadhali atuongezee masaa. Ikuwe labda ile ilikuwa kitambo, curfew ilikuwa anga saa 4, ikuwe labda saa 4. Hiyo itaweza tusaidia kidogo.
Asante sana.
That's
tutafuta masharti.
She sells crisps, and we've seen them selling crisps, njugu, and others. They make money during peak traffic time.
Yes, they do.
So she starts her work at 3 p.m. and she goes with her children so that we have more hands and more people selling. But she must stop that so she goes and queues for matatu now.
Not working.
Completely. That's it.
Not
that's
working.
It's not working.
That's final. Forget about it, you're asking. This curfew should be moved from 8 p.m. City. See, we passed the leader. Just redo this proverb.
Well, the proverb
Start with neck.
Well, let me read the proverb first. If you overtake a leader, you break your neck.
Uh-huh.
Okay. The reality is, in our case here, even if you don't overtake the leader,
you still break
your neck. But you asked me to change the proverb. If the leader doesn't want you to break your neck,
should allow you to overtake.
Forget allowing you to overtake. They will allow you to actually have an atmosphere of competition.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because races and overtaking, you can't overtake unless there's a race. But an equitable opportunity for racing, which in this instance is time, enables not only for you to stay safe, but the discussion of neck is completely thrown out of the discussion or the breaking of it.
Completely. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching and listening to SpiceFM's The Situation Room this week. We'll be back next week. From what time? From Monday. Which day? Monday.
The first Monday of next week.
The first Monday of next week.
Mm.
And then we start at 6 a.m.
Sure.
Shall we be finishing at 10 even next week?
I think